First thing on the agenda for this morning is any public comment that we might have. Go ahead and come up to the microphone and please speak into it. Just give us your name and we'll go from there.
Hello, my name is August Mathesrud, county resident. I was told that the sheriff had been discussing purchasing additional police cruisers. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I am currently an electric car owner. I've been driving electric since 2014. Bargersville, Indiana currently uses Tesla Model 3s as a means of patrol. They estimated that the additional cost for the Tesla would be paid for in under 24 months due to fuel savings, maintenance savings, and things of that nature. They're on track to hit it in 19 months. As the world continues to deal with things of climate change and that nature, electric cars get cleaner because the grid gets cleaner. Unlike an internal combustion engine vehicle, which does not get any cleaner. It will only get dirtier as it gets moved along. Teslas also retain their value much higher than a typical police cruiser, so depreciation is lower. And some of the additional safety features, such as dash cams that would need to be added to a traditional police cruiser, are included in the base model of a Tesla, to include all four sides of the vehicle, which can reduce overall costs. So I would highly encourage that we at least review the idea of using electric vehicles as we continue to move forward in this new millennium and with all the changes that come along. Thank you.
Sir,
Thank
can you repeat one more time?
Yeah.
Where that other location was that's currently?
Bargersville, Indiana.
Bargersville, South Indy.
There's also a couple in, I think, one or two in Connecticut, but I know Bargersville here in Indiana is local. We also, they suffer from not having necessarily the same infrastructure that Tippecanoe County has when it comes to such as a Model 3 Tesla. We have the superchargers at the mire, so in the event that someone needs to charge up because they need additional fuel, you can normally stop in 10 to 15 minutes and get over half a tank to resume duties without interruption long term. And speaking to, I know that the Fremont incident where they had to bow out because they didn't charge the car overnight, if you didn't fuel up your internal combustion engine, you're bowing out too. It's the same principle. It's just the fact that it does take longer to fuel them. But as a Tesla owner, I can tell you that they outperform everything except for the Pursuit Hemi V8. I think it's $47,000 for that vehicle, and it's still performance-wise the cheapest Tesla beats on an every metric except for the highest top speed. So nobody's getting away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you state your name again? I know you did it first.
August Mathesrud.
How do you spell your last name? Yeah.
Mathesrud.
Okay.
And thank you. I'm supposed to be at work. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
That's great.
Any other public comment for us this morning? Seeing and hearing none, we're going to move on. I'm going to remind everyone that anyone that's needing to address the council to please come up and use the microphone. And Paula reminded me that we have wipes and so forth up there to be able to wipe the area as needed. So next on our agenda is we're going to address our 911 issues.
Page 55.
Yeah, page 55.
Get 6 feet away.
Come on.
By the
Kathy.
way, a Tesla would be cool.
What's it cost?
$41,000 base. 10 grand more. But they're cool. I'd drive one.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm not up here because I'm a 911 expert. I'm up here because I'm old and I've been around for a long time. So with that said, I think what Rob and Sheriff Goldsmith have put together is a pretty fair representation of what the needs of 911 are. You'll see that over a number of years, the 911 budget has remained pretty much flatlined. I think Bob has a nice graph that will show that revenue continues to rise. That's the money that we get from the state on a monthly basis, and that is due in large part because the state board has taken on more responsibilities for some of the network costs, and the benefit to the county shows in those revenue increases. One of the things that we want to share with you this morning has to do with a project related to CAD, computer-aided dispatch system, our records management system, and a jail management system. And just a brief history lesson, back in about 1997, Sheriff Murtaugh then did something that was really kind of groundbreaking in public safety, in that he was successfully able to put all law enforcement agencies on one network so that we share information across a very broad spectrum, jail data, data from the 911 calls, and data that happens, for example, at a crash, an accident scene. We have operated with that software through many renditions over the years. That company has been bought and sold. It was originally known as OSSI. It is now Central Square. It has been HTE, SunGuard, Superion. Some of those names will be familiar to folks in county government because there are ties to some of the financial software that we use now. Quite frankly, we've been married to that company for 23 years, and it has changed enough that we don't get the same level of support, and we're using older products. And I think that became very evident when we were trying to do the DLZ jail study, that it was virtually impossible to pull down some of those reports, and we had to find a backdoor through the midst to be able to make that happen. So over the past few months, at least 18 months plus, local law enforcement agencies have been working on vetting companies that are in this business now, and they have come up with what I believe is a viable solution for area public safety. There are a couple of bumps in the road with this project. The first bump is that not all agencies, area agencies, are on board with the company that's been selected by that group. The Lafayette Police Department will likely go another direction for their records management needs and possibly for their CAD needs, but the West Lafayette, Purdue University, and Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Office are all on board with a deal with Caliber, which is a company that is Indiana-based, has a huge footprint here in the Midwest. Many agencies are using the jail management software as well as CAD and RMS. What the public safety agencies did several months ago is they began interviewing these companies, as I said, vetted them, asked a lot of questions, came to a conclusion, and were not required apparently to do an RFP because in the case of, you can sole source this, but in the case of Caliber, we're actually fortunate because they're listed as a member of the QPA process with the state of Indiana. So they have put together a deal for us that has basically been placed in a 5-year model. And this takes into account that, we'd be doing this project this year in 2020. No agency has budgeted for this project yet, because of just the way things have happened. So Purdue, West Lafayette, even the sheriff's budget doesn't reflect the annualized cost for this project. Our recommendation is, and what we'll be bringing to the commissioners meeting in the very near future, is a proposal on the contract that basically 911 money be the first money in, and then everybody else catch up in subsequent years. As you look at the base quote, you'll see that, again, the term of 5 years, that amount for E911 is $1.5 million. That is That is strictly for the CAD portion of that, the computer-aided dispatch portion. That's the $306,000 out over 5 years. And then you see the sheriff's office, RMS fees, prosecutor, Lafayette Police Department with zero sum at West Lafayette and Purdue. And if we go back down to the next, if you can scroll down, please, Bob. That is that is what the annualized amount would be over years 2021 and beyond. And then we went one step further, looked at the same dollar amounts, and again, assuming that no one has this in their budget asked for 2021 right now, 2022 would be the first year that payments would be due from the other participants in the program and from the sheriff's office for the non-911 portion of the project. And that would have them chipping in to pay years 2022 through 2025. With that said, this is information that I had put together for Bob last week and for council reps for the Sheriff's Department. We have been in ongoing discussions with Caliber, and the question was asked. I think it's a fair question. We were in a relationship with our vendor for 23 years last time. What would be the value to us if we did something longer than a 5-year term? And they have presented us with a draft of looking at 8 years, which lowers the cost of that substantially. It's probably $300,000 or $400,000 total. I didn't bring that model with me today because I knew Bob already had this inserted into his presentation. The bottom line is we don't have, the sheriff doesn't have this in his budget ask as of right now for 2021. We know that Purdue is on a contract freeze, so they cannot enter into contracts and they don't have any new money until they get through COVID. West Lafayette is going to be the same way. We have money in 911 for a project like this, and this is why we have kept our budget flat, because we knew at some point in time we were going to need a new CAD system. We knew at some point in time we'd have to do a refresh on the premise equipment in each one of the PSAPs, meaning the nuts and bolts, the network switches and connections that cause 911 calls to be delivered. That's exactly why we have guarded that 911 money like the Holy Grail for better than a decade right now. And Bob can remember the days that we were upside down in 911, and we are in good shape in 911 right now because we've chosen not to use those funds for personnel costs for any of the area PSAPs. That may change in the future. It may have to change in the future, but certainly we're in a situation right now where we can afford to do this and should. So with that, I don't know a lot about the software because I didn't sit through the meeting. So I have both the sheriff and Rob Hangy, who runs 911 for the sheriff's office here, so that they can answer any questions. But again, I think this project makes perfectly good sense. We're going to have to address the issue of what it looks like if you have two different CAD systems, but it is 2020 and it'll be 2021 before you know it, and those systems are up and running in other counties, not without some hitches, but in a perfect world we'd have everybody on one system. As of this date, I'm not sure that that's going to be able to happen. Things are always subject to change, and agencies can go the direction that they want to, but in the best case scenario, we could have everybody, and worst, we'd have one odd man out agency. So with that, Sheriff or Captain?
I'll talk for this thing. I'm going to remove this so you understand what I'm saying, because you're probably wondering, why would we go to something, again, when you don't have all the agencies on board. The way this started, being NIBRS compliant, reporting crimes and such, if you're not NIBRS compliant by at some point next year, it keeps getting extended, going back and forth, then there's federal funding for grants that you're not entitled to. That being said, what they did is we created, Captain Hangy was on it, but each agency had people, representatives that traveled. We had people go to Phoenix, Arizona. They went to Ohio. They went to Boone County to figure out what would be best for us. And that also included the fire departments, so we can communicate with them. Anyway, they came up with Caliber. And we started, and the idea was with Central Square, it keeps changing. We're paying a few $100,000 a year for them to maintain software that they're not maintaining. You can't get them on the phone to fix anything. We lose reports. You can't generate reports. It's an old dinosaur, and they're not going to fix it anymore. So basically, our hands are tied with paying a few $100,000 for something that's not working, or we pay, I don't know, $1 million something for their new product. So we just keep going back to the same thing. Their new product, there's only maybe a dozen or so agencies in Indiana that have that. You can communicate with them if they'll allow you. With Caliber, there's a few thousand agencies in the United States that have that. We'd have access to the state police reports now. You can send messages to other agencies if you're looking for someone and they get pulled over, say in Colorado, they can see, oh, hey, Deputy Smith and such pulled this person over, and you can message each other back and forth. You can pull reports like you've never been able to before. You can go to paperless. You can go to paperless on a lot of things. Warrants, we're not packing them in cabinets like we were. It'll automatically generate. It should help us some maybe with civil process, which it's over 40-some thousand papers a year we're serving. So it makes us more efficient. It gets us up to speed. Unfortunately, it looks like the Lafayette Police Department is not on board with this. They're wanting to go with a different vendor, and that's fine. And I think we can work through that and build interfaces. I mean, these guys are a lot smarter than we are, but they can build these interfaces so we can still communicate, because that was one of the conversations I had with Caliber was it's kind of a deal breaker if we can't read the other agency's police reports. We need to be able to do that. And they've assured us we can do that. You basically sit down and go, I want to know this, this, and this. The other thing that's nice for it, our representative from Caliber would be out of Kokomo, I believe, Captain Hangy, instead of somewhere we don't know where they are. So if they're not answering the phone, we can get in the car and drive over there, is my opinion. The other thing is Boone County is kind of the testing site for this. And if any of you have ever met Sheriff Nielsen, he's very forward-thinking, and if he's got an idea, he puts his team on it, and they get problems solved quickly. So they are in the process of trying to build the interface with the Indianapolis Police Department, because they're right there. That should open that up to everyone else. And we have the ability to contact them anytime we have any questions. They're very helpful. We work well together. But that's kind of a history of, if I was in your seat, I want to know, well, why are we not on the same page? I'll be honest with you, that's not a good thing. We don't want that. When we go to other agencies throughout the United States for training or whatever, it's kind of odd that Tippecanoe County, we all communicate through the same programs. It's very odd. Hopefully, maybe at some point they'll be on board, but that our goal is to move forward with this project so we are better than what we are. And the JMS helps work release. It's simply dragging a name from a folder to another back and forth instead of re-entering everything. It's very, very beneficial. You may ask why the cost for the Sheriff's Department is so much higher. We just have more people using it. It's a user fee type thing, and with all the jailers we have, merit deputies, all the staff that has to have access to RMS and JMS, the cost goes up for us. So that's somewhat of the history of it, and kind of the way I work. I do more of a team approach. My team said Caliber, they're going to use it more than I am. Captain Hangy has done an unbelievable amount of work on this, so I'll let him discuss the packages and any costs and questions you might have, because he's going to be able to answer those better than I am, because he's kind of wrapped his hands around this and made it his own. And thank you to Commissioner Brown for all his knowledge on this, because I mean he's not that old, but he was there when this started, so he understands a lot of what's going on and what we're going through, and it's exhausting to get to where we are. And the 8-year plan makes more sense because Caliber is always thinking forward, and they're always changing their technology, and they're moving forward all the time. To go 5 years, yeah, it's great. Technology is always changing, but 8 years makes more sense financially and with a company that's already proven. So with that, I will put my mask back on and have somebody step up. If you don't come up here, Bob yells at you. So
Real quick, while Rob's moving up, the last line or that last table, Bob, shows if you're interested in what real costs are for the project, we have to net out what we're currently paying for maintenance, and that's in red off to the Central Square maintenance column there. And that's what the agencies are paying right now for maintenance, and then that is also what 911 is paying. And again, remember, 911 can only pay for the things specific to 911, which are CAD and CAD mobile. So 911 can't pay for any of the other costs associated with RMS or JMS. So that's the real money cost.
Thank you. And just to add to what Sheriff Goldsmith spoke about is that in this particular project, again, we've looked at a variety of companies that specialize in police-related software and public safety software. One of the unique things about this individual company is as they put together pricing for the public safety side of it, we made sure that we partnered with the fire departments, and we've included the emergency medical services or the ambulance service in this project. So you will see that within the individual jurisdictions, the fire departments are included within that pricing. So there's not a separate package for the fire departments. We have 13 different fire departments in this jurisdictional area. And so they have been working very diligently over the last year and a half to put together mutual aid agreements, which then impact our insurance standards organization or ISO ratings for homeowners insurance. So this type of public safety package benefits every single homeowner in Tippecanoe County because it lowers that ISO rating from that. So with those mutual aid agreements, we not only see a benefit for law enforcement and public safety, but we also see a benefit to the homeowners through their insurance pricing and reducing those costs. The other key factor here is the efficiency that this system brings into the system. As we spoke with Jason Huber about the project, the jail management system, we're able to bring community corrections onto that system. Currently, they run an antiquated tracking system in their building that does not allow for communication between community corrections and the jail. So by having this project, the jail management system, we're able to create community corrections as a sub-user to the jail management system. So they're both going to be on the same system. Again, as Tracy alluded to, if we have somebody that's transferred from the jail to community corrections, it's just a matter of going in and drag and dropping that individual over to their screen. So the efficiency, while we're not able to measure that, the efficiency created in the system, it far outweighs any cost associated with the jail management system. The other area, again, is we mentioned the warrant side of it. We continue to have a problem with the kind of the paper warrant. Judges issue a warrant on Friday afternoon. By the time that makes it down to our office and gets entered, that may be Monday morning or Tuesday morning by the time the interoffice mail and everything. Now with this, the Odyssey system, which handles the courts and warrant system, they're able to electronically enter that warrant into the Odyssey system. That electronically transfers to the sheriff's office then, and we have instant access then to that warrant system. All they have to do is verify, the records clerks verify that information, and that warrant is now entered. So again, from an efficiency standpoint, we're reducing having individuals sitting there manually entering the warrants, manually having to transfer those warrants from the courthouse down to the sheriff's office and then to the respective agencies associated with that warrant. So Daly, Lafayette, West Lafayette, Purdue, come to the sheriff's office, pick up a pack of warrants that have been issued for their jurisdiction, and then have to manually transfer that back over to their agency. We're able to do that paperlessly and more efficiently with that warrant system. The other benefit is we talk about the value of networking. And again, as Tracy stated, the networking on this particular system is there's 165 agencies within Indiana that are currently running the Caliber project, including the Indiana State Police. So we have access to all of those records in-state. So we have information sharing. We know that criminals are commuters, and who may be in Lake County today, may be in Tippecanoe County tomorrow, and then back up in another area the next day. So this gives us an opportunity to share information and see what that person's patterns and habits have been. There's also 2,500 agencies nationwide that use the Caliber project or product. So we're able to, again, look at that information. So as the sheriff stated, if somebody in Oklahoma or somebody in Missouri has an encounter with law enforcement, we're able to see that encounter and access that information and query that individual agency on that. Currently, Central Squared, the product that we use, there are 7 agencies in Indiana that use that product. And so the information void, especially in the world that we live in today, the information void created by Central Squared and the lack of customer service provided by Central Squared is really very detrimental to the public service that we provide. You have to understand that when we talk about the CAD system, the CAD is from the time you dial 911 and one of our dispatch operators answers that phone to the time that that final report is submitted to the prosecutor's office. That goes through many steps, and this is a way to efficiently have the officers creating their report, sharing information, and moving that forward either to you as a consumer because you were involved in a crash and you need that information for your insurance company, or for you as a consumer because you have a medical emergency at your home. You had to call 911, and we need to share that information with fire and EMS to efficiently get them to your location by mapping that route for them and sharing the information about that particular call. So that's why it's so critical to have that information sharing for all of our mobile users, the in-car computers, as well as our dispatch center. So.
The next steps for us, this was kind of an FYI today because it is tied to the 911 budget, although it's not masked within the budget this year. It is tied. It certainly has a bearing because of the ongoing situation with our revenue on hand. Next steps for us are Doug is preparing an MOU for the other agencies so they can sign on to this to say that they are participating. We'll make their premises available and understand what their costs are going to be moving forward. Commissioners would approve the contract, and then we would be coming back to council at some point in time for a special appropriation from 911 funds. And Bob, I believe you have a chart as well that talks about the revenue.
Yeah. The historical revenue?
Yeah.
Page 76.
Any comments that you have, Bob, or your perception of the revenues? I mean, I think the chart kind of speaks for itself, and we know that the reason that has happened again is because some of those network fees have gone away, so we'll continue to see that rise. And you have more phone subscribers. That's where that money, that dollar you pay from your cell phone or your tablet that's connected to the internet, that all comes back to the state and filters down through the county.
And this is the sort of project that's why we want to build. That's why we don't want pretty much a straight across line when you're looking at the cash balances to build up, because you are going to have some really expensive projects. So we're in good financial shape to handle certainly something like this.
What is going to be the difference if we went to the 8-year? What in terms of the annual costs, and is that going to go to all the different agencies, including 911 and the sheriff, or would that just be only to the sheriff's department?
Yeah, the reduction is across the board, so we're spreading that payment out over that 8-year period. And so right now with the CAD, it's 1.266 with the annual term payment. If we go to the 8-year, it's 1.04 million, so we have realized a savings of $240,000 over that additional 3-year period. And then under the CAD portion of it, for the mobile users, which is the in-car computers for both fire, police, and EMS, we realize almost a $100,000 difference. It's 1.35 million versus 1.29 million. I'm sorry, it's 60,541. And then through the RMS savings, we're at 970,000. RMS is a records management system, which is everybody that requests a report, that's where that report goes into, and that's where our warrant information goes into. And so it's 970,000 under the annual versus 917,000. So we have a cost savings of $52,500 for that particular project. Overall, we'll save $337,464 under the 8-year plan versus the 5-year plan.
Can we back up a little bit? And I'd like to understand a little bit about what we're currently doing as far as, what's the current system? Are we going from a system where we have Lafayette to where we don't have Lafayette?
Correct.
Are we not connected to Lafayette today? Can you explain, just for those of us that aren't familiar with the system?
Sure.
Just a real basic.
So for the records management system, how we're currently set up is all agencies deposit information into
And
that
then,
system.
does that include the fire departments, or is that going to be new?
The fire departments have their own independent reporting system. So you have to think of their discipline under fire. They have NIFRS reports, which is National Fire Incident Reporting System, which is an equivalent to a NIBRS report, which is under law enforcement. So same type of reporting type system. They track different features for the fire department versus what we track for law enforcement. So there is a disciplinary difference just due to the nature of that. So right now, the fire departments do not share information into the records management system. They will continue to report to NIFRS through the State Fire Marshals Association. What this does is this gives them the opportunity to have the dispatch information. One of the critical things that the fire departments look at is, as they're responding to a business, like for example, Eli Lilly, we're able to embed maps of the property. We're able to embed hazardous material warnings and hazardous material information for that particular premise. We're able to map and provide access information for Knox box or key into a business information. So that's all information that we're able to share with our fire departments now. They're able to see the same dispatch note information if it's a personal injury crash, where you have law enforcement, ambulance service, and fire department responding. So the information sharing is there. The records management portion of it, they can track information if they choose to put that in there. Again, as long as that complies with the state requirements for their fire reporting, then they're able to utilize that system as well, and that's built into the project.
So that will be new, or that's what we're doing today on that?
This is the new system.
The new
Currently,
system,
they
okay.
just do tracking through the state on a separate system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the costs are currently, where are they showing up in the budget today?
Bob, can you go back to the comparator for the Central Square? So one of the critical things that we're looking at for this is we have our annual maintenance payment for Central Square coming up in November. So that is one of the goals. So if you see that Central Square maintenance fee,
Right,
which
is
is the
that a-
red numbers.
Is that a 5-year? I'm not sure.
No, that is what our annual cost is. So if you compare that column H with column E, that is our cost associated with those two projects.
So it's going to go,
That is, what is in red is the 5-year cost. So it'd be 1/5 of that on an annual basis.
okay, so you really need to compare G and H.
Right, it's for example, it's $110,000 a year just for 911. That's in the sheriff's budget this year, and I would guess it has been put in the sheriff's, but is already in the sheriff's 911 budget for next year as well, because we knew we would have that bill coming due. That all started before we finalized.
So the 110, you're saying it's 100 and, it says 135 is the annual cost for the, no, that's the new cost.
Just look at the central, if you want to talk about just maintenance cost right now, divide what is in column H by
By 5.
because to do an
Okay.
apples to apples comparison,
Okay.
we took those annual maintenance costs out to 5 years. The only thing that it doesn't include is the escalation. There's always on an annual basis, anywhere from 2 to 7% increase. That doesn't take that increase into
Okay.
So it's 500 annual for the new system, a little less than, and 200 annual for the old system. Column E, total divided by 5, is a little under 500. Column H, divided by 5, is a little under 200. Am I reading that correct?
I think you are, and the thing that we have to realize is that the cost for the new system is not this is just for Central Square. It's just maintenance and support. The cost for Caliber is maintenance, support, and initial purchase for the software as well.
If you annualize out the Caliber cost at 67,000, let me look at the exact number here.
What is the running cost?
It's approximately, $66,927 for the RMS portion of it for our annual cost under Caliber, where under Central Squared, our annual cost for that is $112,000. The addition of the jail management system is an additional $69,000 under Caliber. And so under the Central Squared, if you look at the 911 and Sheriff's Office, those two combined in there, you have $135,000 per year for the Sheriff's Office that we would expend for all of the products versus your 554 and your 252 combined. So
I think it would be a lot helpful if I could see it broken out a little bit, like what's the fixed cost for the product versus the running costs, so we can compare. Because what happens after 5 years or 8 years? Is that, if after 5 years, then we just pay the running costs, or?
correct. That, as Commissioner Brown explained, that
Right,
the kind of where it looks lopsided on this is we are making that initial software purchase. We've already made that purchase, so we're just paying the annual maintenance. If we do that initial software purchase, then we're only faced with the annual maintenance fees of $135,000 per year for us.
Lisa, is you want to see what, so we do an 8-year deal with them, what does maintenance cost look like if we're still with them in year 9 when we
Sure.
don't have that purchase portion?
Right, because typically we see the initial, you have the variable costs, and then you have the fixed cost, then you have the annual running costs. And it's kind of that would be helpful to see.
Yeah, we can provide that
Do
information.
you know, and I know you guys don't speak for Lafayette, but do you know what Lafayette is saying, where they want to use a different system?
So when we look at our system, I'll explain our system. So the Sheriff's Department is a very unique individual, is that we're in charge of the jail management system. So we have to have jail tracking information in there. We are responsible for the courts and for the warrant system. So we have to have warrant information in there. And then we are also responsible for the patrol side of it. So we have that, as well as then the dispatch center. Okay. So we have all those unique individual pieces of the pie. Okay. Lafayette Police Department, they simply have the records management system. So what they are looking at is they're looking into the future, into artificial intelligence type technology, where basically every officer on the road is going to be a robot. They're going to stand there, and the artificial intelligence will dictate their report and all of that information. While that's a great futuristic goal, we have to deal with what we have now and in the future. So Lafayette has decided to pursue that kind of futuristic view that they feel suits them best for that product. And again, they're only looking at the records management portion of it. So they're not taking into account what the other agencies' needs are to be in collaboration with us. So again, the chief has decided to take them a different direction. They were on board with Caliber and agreed to that, and then they did some additional research and decided to change directions midstream. Lafayette Fire Department is still very supportive of the Caliber product and are backing that product. The police department has decided to go a different direction.
And they're bring the Lafayette Fire Department along with them, or will they?
They'll stay with us.
The Lafayette will stay with us.
Because the other thing is, right now, if you're familiar with Lafayette, they're going to this mutual, or like Wabash Fire, Lafayette and West Lafayette respond, take the closest unit. So they're trying to get something that builds this product. Caliber already does it. Literally install, flip a switch, and it's gonna tell you who should go first. Rob's a fire guy, but in general, it's already built, where they're still trying to find something to build that. So that would help speed that process along. I attend the fire chiefs meetings. They've all said they're absolutely behind this 100%.
Will there be additional costs to create or develop the interface with, for you guys to be able to communicate with the LPD?
So there's two different things that are going to happen. So we have interface like you spoke of with whatever product that they have. We also have what's called an information exchanger. There is no cost associated with that info exchanger. So if I enter in Rob Hangy through Lafayette Police Department, that information or my contact information is shared with the Caliber product. So that's an information exchanger. There's no cost associated with that. If we want to read their entire narrative report instead of calling them up and saying, hey, send me a PDF copy of that, then that interface, yes, we will have to build an interface, and there will be a cost associated with that. Until we know which product they are going to go with, they've changed 3 or 4 or 5 different times. So until we know which product they're going to go with, we don't know what the cost of that interface is going to be. The unique thing about Caliber is they're a Harris Computer Company. They're held by Harris Computers. So they are a computer software company. So it assured us that they will be able to build the interface. Again, they just have to know who they're doing business with in order to be able to build that interface.
And do we have any idea who will pay for that? Is that going to be the county or the city?
That's a good question because, we are going to have to look at those and say who is the benefiting end user of this? Is it Tippecanoe County or is it Lafayette City? And so we're going to have to look at that and come up with some kind of agreement on that interface because ironically Lafayette City has reached out to Caliber and said that same question. Hey, what can we do to build an interface to these software companies that we're looking at? So we're both talking the same language. Realistically, it would be best if all the agencies just come on board and have the same product. But right now, that doesn't look like that's going to happen.
So why are we rushing?
We're not rushing. There's 2 things that we look at. Number one, we've been with this product for 23 years. We have a couple large milestones that we're looking at. Number one would be the central squared annual payment is why are we paying an additional $300,000 to a company who's not providing service to us? And we continue to have those issues, even when we've expressed through these negotiations with contract vendors is, hey, you guys just aren't performing the way you say you should be. And they continue to fail to answer those requests, even under the product that we have now. So we're trying to avoid paying that $300,000 payment in November and then turn around and have an additional expense associated with this product. So that $300,000 can be applied to offset some of the costs from this particular project. The second thing is the NIBRS compliance that we talked about. That's the FBI reporting of crime statistics. It used to be called the UCR Uniform Crime Report. They've switched to a different reporting system. The FBI and state has switched to a different reporting system. So all agencies are required to be NIBRS compliant as of January 1st of 2021. If you're not NIBRS compliant, then you forfeit any federal funding or federal grants that are available to you. So the reason why this started is we knew that NIBRS goal was coming. So back in January is when we started to have this conversation. And again, we spoke with 10 or 12 different vendors. We've done product demos. We've done hundreds of hours of research and site visits on these particular projects. So we're not hurrying. We're trying to make the most efficient use of taxpayers' money for this project, as well as provide us with the type of product that we need to move
Appreciate
forward.
your detail. Are we not compliant with the current Central Square system?
We're not, and
It
we would
isn't.
have to pay approximately $10,000 to $40,000 to become NIBRS compliant with them.
The reason I asked the question about, so it's possible.
Yes.
The reason it feels rushed is if it was a 23-year-old system that we've known for a long time is outdated and it wasn't included in the request for the budget, it feels rushed because we're just now hearing about it. So software systems, and I'm not the council IT expert, but anytime you put a system in, well, the bridge that we have with all enforcement agencies is pretty special, like the uniqueness you talked about, Bob. Blowing a hole in that right now and having separate systems.
Well, the hole's coming, because Lafayette's switching.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they apparently signed a contract a couple of weeks ago.
That's not good. Why are we assuming then the responsibility, anytime you get software and you update it, whatever you customize has got to be updated, or not necessarily have to be, but oftentimes does, and you'll carry that thing with you the rest of your life. You know, it has things like, if that's a standard report, why are we worrying about pushing it to them? They should be worrying about pulling it from us.
Correct.
But if, once we start breaking this thing up, this is a 20-year commitment we're probably making. There's no doubt it's a better system and the value seems there as far as what the cost would be, but do we know that West Lafayette's going to sign on for those dollar amounts and Purdue's going to sign on for those dollar amounts? And it just feels, if it wasn't included in the budget, it feels premature to rule them out altogether. But it sounds like you're saying that's not possible?
I can only speak
go ahead.
I can only speak to the negotiation process that went on, because believe me, nobody wants the whole team together that was put in place by Sheriff Murtaugh back in 1997. Worked very well, served our citizens very well. Tom and I, Dave, have talked to the mayor.
Tracy?
This system, the system that they're going to is their marquee system that fits their needs for their new $40 million police headquarters.
That we passed allowed to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it, you know, I have spent hours on the phone with the chief, and initially I thought that this was going to be an RMS thing, and that it was just going to impact, you know, they'd have a different records system. Now it's records and CAD. And CAD with a company that is only, and Axon, they're in the body camera business. Now they've also gone into the RMS and CAD, but they only have CAD deployed in one city right now, and that's in Maricopa County, Phoenix, Arizona. So I don't think that it would be wise for us to, I don't think they have the horsepower in the CAD environment, because somebody asked the question, why don't we just go to Axon, then we'll all be on the same system? Well, LPD, the city of Lafayette, has a sweet deal with Axon, and I don't think they're going to pay a dime for their RMS. County will be responsible if they go with CAD. County 911 will be responsible for footing that bill. It's an eligible expense, and we'd be hard pressed to say no, it's not going to be covered. That is our reality. I beat this thing up I got involved in it in May, and the reason that it's not in the budget is because we didn't know where the pieces kept moving. I thought it was a done deal in June, and so did Rob, that we were all marching in the same direction, and then all of a sudden we're not. And it has been.
That's why it's not on the budget.
That's,
We were trying to get it done for the budget, and as we got closer to handing stuff in, they went off on a different direction. It kind of went, oh, but all the other agencies are on board. But
Another thing that we have to look at is we cannot penalize West Lafayette, Purdue University, and Tippecanoe County based on what Lafayette's decision is for their RMS product. So we have a severe deficiency in this product that we are running right now. And this is a way to save those costs in that efficiency standpoint for our agency, as well as bring us up. That product is 23 years old, and you can tell it's a 23-year-old product. And so every time they do an upgrade on the product, then we have 10 other things we have to fix associated with that. Right now, our electronic interface between the clerk's office on tickets and the individual police departments has never worked for West Lafayette Police Department and has worked for us, but then over the last month and a half when they pushed out their last update, we've had several days or weeks associated with that interface not taking place. So now our clerks have to print out paper tickets and send them up, and then the clerk's office has to manually enter that information, costing a lot of man hours in that time frame. So again, this has been a situation, I appreciate the fact that you feel that it is rushed, but this has been a situation that has been vetted very extensively, and we've talked with a lot of agencies to make sure that this is the right direction going, because this is, to us, a huge leap. I mean, it's like saying, hey, all of a sudden I'm going to change professions and I'm going to go from engineering at Caterpillar to law enforcement at the Sheriff's Department as I did. That's a huge jump of faith because we've had a system that's been in place for 23 years.
Have
However,
our IT people looked at it?
I'm sorry?
Have our IT people looked at
Absolutely.
this?
Kent Croft and his team have been involved with all parts of it. We continue to have meetings with Caliber on a weekly or daily basis to bring us up to speed on some of the questions that we have or questions they have for that. So Kent and his team have been intimately involved with this project. So
I think it should be noted too, when we started this, Central Square wouldn't even call us.
right.
Like, they didn't even want to bring a presentation to us. It took a very not so nice email or phone call from Chief Cox to even get them back on board. Otherwise, I mean, they weren't willing to talk to us at all. Then they jumped in and they were all on board. We were getting phone calls and emails every other day, and now we get nothing.
It sounds like we know they're not our long-term solution, no matter what, yeah.
Right, yeah, we've had issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, Central Square has been tough to deal with from day one. There's parts of the product that they've been swearing they're gonna upgrade since we took over 6 years ago. Took over the jail management, or the IT management down at the jail. And they haven't stepped to the plate and done anything. The two solutions that we've been discussing, the Caliber and the Axon, I'm more comfortable with the Caliber simply because it's a product that exists, it's been out there. You know, I'm a tinkerer, you know, I see all this stuff about SpaceX going to Mars, putting a man on Mars, and I love that kind of stuff. But when it comes to public safety, I don't want to be a beta test site for somebody. I want a tried and true product. I don't want to go out there and have everything go down at 2 a.m. and leave patrolmen with nothing. You know, I want something that's been tested, and that's what I've seen in the Caliber. So far, they've been professional to work with. Questions have been answered.
What about this interface with LPD?
We're already pulling data from the old system to provide to Lafayette and West Lafayette and various things. And Purdue is doing a number of research projects off of our data. So we've got experience pulling data out of this old system. The new one seems to be a little easier to get around, work with. The data exchange that Rob had talked about, I've only seen that briefly, but that should be an easier interface to be able to exchange data between departments.
Will anything in their operation impinge on how how 911 works or how we in the sheriff department use the system?
That's gonna come down to how Axon handles it. As far as us with the other departments, the West Lafayette and the Purdue, none of that should change. It should go smoother and easier. It's gonna be the interface between us and Axon, and, you know, my staff is here willing to work and make things work. Andy Milam over at the city is a good guy. He's got a great staff, and we've worked well together. We hang out together periodically throughout the year, you know, building camaraderie. The same with West Lafayette. So we're used to working together, and this is just going to be another incident where we have to find a way to make it work. That's what we do.
Is it truly just a data dump to them on a regular basis? I mean, the systems don't, Axon, we're not going to be dependent on Axon, and they're not going to be dependent on us for the operation of how 911 works. Is that correct?
In February, when I went to see an Axon presentation, they didn't have most of the CAD system ready to go to demonstrate to us. They showed us a few screens. There wasn't a product there for us to see. We asked several questions. So ideally, it's probably going to be a real-time exchange, because I don't think the different departments can handle not coordinating real-time in an incident. I don't know how that's going to work. I think we've got the people here that can make it work.
I do want to clarify, on when a 911 call comes in, I'll just make this really simple. It comes in over the Indiana 911 network, dumps into our system, and the first stop is our Solicom software, which actually is the guts of 911, and then that information is also shared with RMS, not with CAD. That's still the way it runs. So
there will actually be some more efficiency in that. So Caliber being a state of Indiana product on the state bid contract, is they already have that interface in place. So they work directly with Digital, who is our 911 provider. So there is an interface that is already in place and functions on a daily basis all across the state of Indiana for that. So if we think about it, as you know, there are hundreds of interfaces taking place behind the scenes all day long. We look at the final product and say, oh, hey, this is a Microsoft product or a Chrome product or whatever. But there's hundreds of interfaces in there. And again, the benefit is Harris is a computer software company. So they've already worked out all of the kinks. So we're taking the advantage of Boone County being a beta test site here in the state of Indiana. And then they have a big investment in Indiana. So it's important for them to provide a quality product, because there's 185 people in the state of Indiana that can pull their contract at any time. And that's going to leave Harris high and dry on that.
Is it mandatory that LPD goes online in sync with us going online with Caliber?
Is it mandatory?
Yeah. Do these systems have to go live at the same time?
No, they don't. Well, we will go live independent, and then whenever LPD goes live, then that's when they'll go live. So, again, unfortunately, we're working at two different paces with the project. So we have all of public safety, and we have Lafayette. And so there is that division of timelines that are going to take place just due to the nature of the product.
Pat, did you have something to add from the prosecutor's office? Okay.
Their timeline is very quick, because I just sent a text to Pat Flynn that their implementation team, at least for their RMS, is meeting next week.
So do we have to modify Central Square to allow them to go to Axon, and then modify Caliber to allow them to go to Axon?
Everybody is moving towards the data migration. So all of the data that we have in our computer-aided dispatch and RMS system, a data migration will occur from our current provider of Central Squared into our new providers, and that data information has already been exchanged. So they've already mapped out how that is going to take place. It's just a matter of finalizing the contract for that data migration to take place.
I think you answered my question. I'm asking, does changes have to be made to Central Square to allow them to go to Axon now?
No, we own that data, so all of that data, they can pull through data migration. We own that data in our
So
server.
you'll just set up a new data migration path when you bring on Caliber?
The data migration is built into the project. There's no fee associated with that.
But it still has to be set up for LPD to get it.
No, it's housed in the county server tray for the Central Square.
All right, there are data dumps already existing
Right.
that'll be capable of handing stuff off too.
So the reverse question is, does it even matter what they do?
Other than building the interface that you spoke of, no.
But the functionality of 911 isn't going to be compromised by the departments being on a different CAD and RMS system.
Same thing still happens when somebody calls in. When somebody calls in, the MSAG information with the addressing and all the notes and everything still shows up, still gets dispatched. It's what happens with that data after that call, as it has to be dumped into the right system. So we will, it's not completely fair to say that we're gonna be on, if we're gonna be on the same answering system, the Solacom answering system, what happens to that data after that initial call is taken is where the change is. Ours would go into our system, theirs would go into their system. Hopefully we build a bridge that the two are connected so that when people who don't recognize boundaries, jurisdictional boundaries, when you need that data, it's there.
So continuing the same level of service that we've been able to provide, basically seamless.
Because this is
Same
happening all over the country.
efficiencies, moving focus. Okay.
The salesman is based out of St. Louis County in Missouri. He said that they have 7 different agencies running 7 different CADs and 7 different RMS systems in his particular area where he lives. And so, again, those all communicate independently, but then they have an info exchanger where they share information as well. So.
As long as Kent, I mean, it's Kent's office that pays for these things. About a quarter to a third of the software decisions I've made, I wish I'd have made them a different direction. Because when you get down into the weeds, you find out, crap, that didn't do what I thought it was going to. And it's going to be your office that pays for this, because anytime there's a change that becomes, that needs to be fixed, you can do a heroic effort or an easy effort now, but you're going to have to keep repeating that down the road, and just want to make sure we're not setting ourselves up for that. You're still nodding yes.
I'm happier with this solution than other solutions we have in the county.
That was nice, that was really nice.
That's why you keep asking questions, to make sure you got the right.
Yeah.
Pat, did you have something to add from the prosecutor's office?
I've been watching. I wanted to get over here and just say, obviously, we were, in all the negotiations, we wanted all systems to be the same. It does complicate it for our office. We're the end user. So now we have 2 systems to learn, my staff, 2 systems of data being presented to us. And we're very concerned, given that they've not built that bridge before between Axum and Caliber to us. Somehow, in the past, salesmen promised things about how well 2 systems can work together. In reality, it's painful. So we believe there will be we're concerned there'll be a level of slowing us down in efficiency, because we have a second system to process now. It won't be the same as we have right now. And Chief Deputy Jason Biss worked with Rob. We thought we were all in the same wagon up until the end, and then we weren't. And we have talked to Lafayette independently of the sheriff and the commissioner. We'll have to deal with it, but I think there will be an impact to our office. We don't know what we don't know, but this isn't the ideal solution, but I'll go with what was said. It was better than some of the other solutions. At least we got the other agencies on board with the county, so I don't have to learn 4 or 5. But there's going to be an impact, because I know there's going to be hiccups. And plus, we take all that information, then we have to take the information we get from law enforcement as far as police reports to review, to be able to edit, to send out in discovery. We have to put them into our own statewide system for e-filing. So now that's adding another system into the equation for our whole staff to learn. And I can tell you, when PCMS, which is our system, came out with what we had currently, it was a 48-step process for our legal assistance. That's 48 different fields or 48 different clicks to get to data entry. Now, over the last 3 years, PCMS has worked very well, and we've narrowed that down to like 8 or 9 clicks. We have no idea what's going to happen. But I'm really, to say I'm not concerned would be an understatement. I'm very concerned with the fact that we're going to have to learn, because LPD for our office is our largest customer. They dump 60% of the cases to us. So I just want to let you know that, because more, I guess there's going to be more to come later. Thank you.
What's the contingency plan if West Lafayette and Purdue keep looking at that and say, you know, we might want to go that way instead? No MOUs have been signed now, right?
Currently, the Axon program is a body-worn camera system and was developed by body-worn camera system. As you see, West Lafayette went with body-worn camera system, so different camera system. Again, like Pat spoke about, there's 2 different product vendors that they have to interface with. But again, they receive that information. Is it ideal to have 2 separate systems? No, it's not ideal under a perfect world. Is it become very typical to have different systems in a jurisdictional area? Yes, it is, unfortunately.
But we don't feel like there's any risk for West Lafayette and Purdue to change their mind?
No, they are 100% committed towards this project.
But they haven't signed anything, just checking.
Well, we haven't got to that point yet. Yeah,
Because Lafayette was 100% until they weren't, what Pat said. So,
yeah, exactly.
okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's a true statement.
Yeah.
But what you run into with Axon is our cameras we wear on our body. They're the cameras in our vehicles. Same with Lafayette. Like Captain Angie said, West Lafayette, Purdue, they don't have those. It's something totally different. Honestly, the easy thing for us would be to switch to Axon. But then now we've really created a mess. And it's not proven.
No.
And we don't have a jail management system.
there's a
That's,
jail
you know, if we look at our jail budget and the amount of liability and efficiency in the jail system, that's really kind of the overlooked area of our business is the jail. You know, law enforcement officers are out on the street every day and visible every single day. But that jail is the biggest consumer of our budget and our liability and our manpower. And so none of these other products, Axon, and has a jail management system. So what we're going to do is if we do go with Axon, then you have to go find a jail management system that then interfaces with Axon. So no matter what direction we go, again, this particular company gives us all the pieces of the pie, and then it just depends on how much of that pie you are going to consume as a agency. So for us, we're the one that holds the whole pie, and so we have to be able to consume from that entire pie. It's the other agencies that are consuming their portions of that pie that then play into the mix.
My last comment, I think they need to bear the burden, time, cost for interface with the system that the other jurisdictions have chosen.
I agree with you.
I mean, and I understand that we would want to make sure it works, so we might want to do that and bear the cost, but that's on them. Ben, I'm dying to hear what you're thinking.
Come back to that, Roland. That's a good point. In our discussions with LPD, we told them that, and we've been consistent, the sheriff and us, we said, listen, we're one county, we have one fiscal body. You cannot expect, if you go out on your own, and then you come down like a year or 2 later and say, hey, if you want access to our data, you got to pay us, or you got to pay for this. I said, well, that's not going to go well with our county fiscal body, because we've told you up front, if there's any cost, they're on you to get us the information. And we've been very consistent with that. So we've already, again, there'll be more later, right?
Stay tuned.
My opinion, Roland, ask is, I am nowhere an expert. I have not been at the negotiating table or anything like that, and so I value the input from those who have put in the time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, tears, so to speak, into it. From a technology standpoint, with the JMS, one thing I just want to make sure will happen is if we switch systems from central management to Caliber, will all the historical data be data exchange, exported, imported, put in the right fields, all mapped correctly, so that way if you have a repeat offender or whatever, you'll be able to access that same information in a cleaner report, maybe more efficiently, is one concern as you shift from an information system to a different one. So will the JMS transition be smooth is probably an understatement, just because technology is, it is what it is, we've been through it. But will that be able to be done well, shifting from central management to Caliber?
Yes, we have data migration built into both the JMS and the RMS system. We are not data migrating information from CAD because people move 7 times throughout their life. So that historical data in the CAD system, in our dispatch screen, business information, address information, things like that will migrate, but the premise alerts that are outdated, those will be purged. The RMS data and the JMS data that you spoke of will be migrated over,
Okay.
and that is built into the package.
My other thoughts are, from a technology personnel standpoint, hearing Kent talk, I believe, and I feel pretty strongly about this, that, LPD is going to choose what's best for them, and I respect their decision for that. We need to choose what's best for us and for our citizens. And if Ken is confident, fairly confident, that between the partnership with him and the city of Lafayette in getting the interface and getting the connections and getting all the networks, all that techie stuff to work seamlessly, and there's no loss of safety through the 911. If I call 911 from my house, I live in the city of Lafayette, I don't want someone to come 20 minutes later. Now, it may be an emergency where that actually does happen, right? But usually response time is quicker than that. But if Clint, you're confident from a technology standpoint behind the scenes, you and Andy can work, can seamlessly build that connection along with the vendors, then I put my trust into you guys to make that happen and say to do what they say they can do.
He's sitting back behind you.
I wanted to measure my words before I came up.
Oh, you're still here.
Yeah. Basically, yes. I said measure my words, right? Yeah, we've worked well together the last 5 or 6 years. I've recently talked with Andy about this. He's not exactly happy about the split either. And, we've talked about what we're gonna have to do, or some of the things we're gonna have to do to make this work. We're not happy, but it's our job to get it going. Will I come and ask for another position to make this work? No. Will I be coming and asking for more positions for other things? Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, Kent, I think your office will get hit with the brunt of additional workloads, like Roland was saying. Why isn't this working? It'd be new to all of us. We're your department, along with the City of Lafayette's technology. You're the person behind the scenes that makes the magic happen. You're the first person that would get called when it doesn't happen, doesn't work.
And I'm gonna hold Caliber right in the fire with me. I'm gonna make sure their representatives are aware of what's going on and make sure their support staff's there with me. I've had other companies hang us out to dry and we've had to scramble. And with what I've seen from Caliber, I think we'll be okay.
One of the things I might add about the Caliber product is the RMS portion is cloud-based, so they maintain their data connections and service and things like that. So when we face an update on the product and things like that, that will be pushed out by Caliber, where typically we've received a data file and we've had to implement that through Central Squared, and so then it's a matter of making a phone call back and forth and saying, hey, this is the problem we're facing. So Caliber is invested in the technology portion of it as well, and the software upgrades information. So they'll still have a foot in the fire on the upgrades and make sure that those are working properly. So they will be responsible and take some of the load off of the IT department on those upgrades. So that is something that will be beneficial as well.
Will there be any overlap of services, meaning you bring on Caliber for 2 weeks, you have kind of both systems working, so that way nothing is lost? Is that kind of the transition plan you're thinking of, or is it just seamless at midnight on, say, January 1st is just a hypothetical date?
That's what I've heard discussed. I've really got thrown into this in the last month, so there's still a lot of stuff to work out.
So we're, right now, over the next 3 days, we're doing admin training for the records management system. As we're doing that training, they have projected out their testing time frame and then their go-live time frame. So they will be working with Kent and the other IT departments to install and implement their product, and we will run it kind of behind the scenes parallel to our current product while we bring that online. So that's a step as you go through that transition. We will have to run both systems, but then that new information we put in will be migrated over.
Okay. And my last comment is that I will agree with what one of you gentlemen said earlier. I value a proven product. I value something that someone else has already worked the bugs out, and those solutions have already been fixed. This was the initial hiccups. And so my opinion is I would prefer the Caliber without knowing details, just because it is used in like 168 law enforcement agencies around there in the state of Indiana and others. So I do agree in a proven product instead of something that would be beta tested, personally.
So the only other question I have is, when do you hope to get a MOU signed by the other agencies? What's the goal to have that happen?
I have the document prepared. I just need to plug in. They're still working out pay schedules. Just what term we're going to use and what's going to get paid for in year 1, year 2, year 3. So I need that grid, and then I think I'd ask. They have statements of work prepared for us that I've seen. I don't know if they have a similar. Do you know if they have similar statements of work for the other agencies mapped out? If they do, then I guess I just need to get that. Long way of saying, sounds like we just need the grid of what the payments are going to be. But I've got that document, and I can circulate it to the other agencies. It's most of it. I don't know if you need this information, but most of the heavy lifting has been done by the state previously as part of the quantity purchase agreement. So the contract with Caliber doesn't require much work on our end. We just have an on-top MOU that says, hey, we're all committing to this QPA. So it's not that involved on our end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bob Plattenga, question. From us as council at this point, what do we need to do in terms of reflecting any of these numbers, especially the 911, which is going to be the quickest turnaround? Do we need to try to reflect in any budgets that we have before us?
Well, we can't really do anything for the 2021 budgets in that this was all new information like last week to me. And when we advertised the budget, we advertised just the amount that was requested. So council can't approve any more than what was advertised. Now, if you want to do something, I mean, we certainly have the cash. If you wanted to do something in 2020, even if there was going to be some payment in 21, we could encumber that over to 21, but get it in the 20 budget, or else we can just wait till the first of the year and then
Just
do an additional appropriation.
at that
There's
point.
really not much, we can't do anything with the 21.
Yeah, okay. So at this point, it'd be just an additional appropriation that would need to be handled at that stage.
I would think so, yes.
Okay. That's what I was just wanting to make sure mechanically we weren't missing something from what we're doing here this morning. Okay.
Can you deputize Kent?
He can ride with me. I would.
Tried, Kent.
Any other questions from council or anything related to this particular issue?
So will you come before us again and present this? Is that what what's the next step? I guess I'm not clear what the next step is.
The next step would be the MOU, sign, go before the commissioners for the contract, and come back here.
And I think we have I don't know, I think we have an appropriation request, don't we, from 911
For next month?
for next month? Yes.
I don't, do you know?
I think we're just waiting on Bob to get back to sign it. I think we submitted it.
Okay,
Yeah, I signed it. You did?
okay, okay.
Okay.
Well, we'll check on that just to make sure.
So
we
we
got all our
likely
ducks in a
will
row.
have something coming to us in September then.
Okay.
For an additional appropriation to start the whole ball rolling with the 911 side. Okay. Okay. Anything else, council members? Thank you, Sheriff, Rob. Thank you. Pat, Kent. Appreciate everyone's input on this because I know it's a big deal. At the time we are, I think we'll take a short 10-minute break and then we'll get right back into the budget after that, if that's okay with everyone. So let's, 10 minutes and then we'll be right back.
Yep.
Is there any other fund
I know, I
that
just
the
said
money hasn't come from? I mean, is it all just coming from?
Kevin, I blew up my own 11:30, sorry.
Well, I think only that top line there on that thing there was 911.
Thanks, Ron. It's like, yeah, we were really
I
on a
know, I'm an
train.
idiot.
We were on a slow chugging train going What that's from.
Well, the only thing that I want to hope is,
We can be quick. Ben and I have the next few departments. We can just say,
Say, no change, move on.
what is next?
We'll be back on page 23 at the corner,
coroner,
which I'm
coroner,
hoping,
material, yeah, emergency management.
I'm hoping we don't get too bogged down in a couple of these.
And then we have the sheriff.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I know.
I feel like I've already done this, but we haven't, have we?
I know. That's what I was
Oh my
kind of thinking.
gosh.
That one kind of train wrecked the whole idea of being done by noon. The whole 911 discussion.
It's Bob's
But
fault,
needed to,
because
though.
he said, let's do
Yeah. Community
911 first.
corrections, we need to do that, yeah.
Well, and I agreed to do that because I wanted to get it out of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Need Bob back. I need,
Yeah, Bob's.
there he's
So
coming
I see
down.
the
I see
rails
Bob
on.
coming down the hallway in the door.
Hey, Bob, we can have that discussion about those cars when we get to the sheriff's department. How's that?
Well, oh, okay. We do have an additional 1.5 million for 1.5. Yeah, I remember this now.
Wait, is that an
I told
additional
Tracy that they
revenue?
were wondering,
No,
do we have
this is yeah, that'd be nice.
Do you have
I
an
do
additional revenue of 1.5?
No, if we have an additional appropriation request for next month of $1,532,660.
Oh, I thought you were saying we had more money.
I know. I was like, we're
That's-
done.
What?
Is that from 911?
That's for that.
Oh.
That's in 911.
Just so for
For the 911 fund.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. For what was mentioned about next month. Can we
Where
just
we have
go and
money.
do this first thing?
Ask, yeah, talk to Kevin.
What do you want to do first?
The sheriff thing?
The sheriff thing. What sheriff thing?
With the sheriff cars?
Oh, okay.
We have an
I think
update.
You're
that,
talking,
yeah.
so we're in public safety lit,
Yeah, if we could go, we go back there again.
okay?
I guess, and now that to this, I guess as long as everybody still agrees.
Good try, but no.
Helicopter, we're going that route now? Man,
And I think, did I understand that if every sheriff employee took a $50 pay cut, then we'd have enough money for this?
That's what you've been saying.
I thought, that's how I took it anyway, that,
Everybody agree with that?
You don't need to buy it.
And I mean, that takes us to what? What's our total if you do that?
oh.
If you add 83,000?
Well, I'm not gonna add a check, because I don't,
Okay, so
that I could
well,
do
what's the
that.
difference right now?
I've got 117,000, so that leaves only like $50,000 difference.
Well, I don't know if we have any other requests to go in.
Not that I know of, but things when we go through, Well, we've kind of gone through cum cap,
Right.
and so I'm not sure.
Cap is fine.
We haven't gone through the commissioner or the sheriff budget really yet.
No.
But I don't think there's.
I don't think there's drastic things there.
We just don't have things that, well, let's put it in public safety.
Where were we taking that $10,000 for the sheriff retirement? We're gonna minus 10 out of his budget, but then that was going into, where was that? That was going.
Was that a-
It's going into the sheriff, the service fee fund.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
When we get around to that one, and some of that stuff, okay, we can, I would like to just go through fund by fund when you think you're all kind of done. The other funds just to, because some of them I think maybe didn't get mentioned. I'd like you to at least see them.
Right. At the very least, we need
With
to,
this little kind of
back and forth.
jumping around.
Well, we've hit a lot of them, but we probably ought to at least
Yes.
scroll through to
Yeah.
make sure we're all good.
Check them off.
Okay, we are all back now. So we're gonna call this back to order, and our auditor has pointed out that he wants to address, or wants us to address the vehicle situation in lit public safety. So that's on page, I don't remember now.
45.
45.
Talking to the sheriff's department, to Terry back there, under the line 4520 for the vehicles, we understand that maybe the 35,000, I just used 20 vehicles at 35,000. That's not going to quite be enough to cover all of the expenses of those vehicles. If we could add $83,800 to that total, that is almost, the way I understand it, kind of the worst-case scenario, because we're projecting out what the cost would be next year.
Next year.
So if we add that 83.8, it still does leave the total fund expenditures not that much under, but like $33,000 under what I had estimated for revenues, so, you know.
So if we're okay with that.
I think we're okay with that, and I think almost for sure that the 3.6 million in revenue is low. Using the 90%, I would be pretty confident that it is low, but I think that's the watermark that we want to use, that.
Okay.
So Bob, can I look at the whole public safety again? What are we spending? We've been adding, what are we spending?
Well, we got into the sheriff section, we've
We're
got,
adding,
these are like jailers, the full-time employees are the non-merit. The 430,000, that's the amount that we moved over that was created in 19 and 20. And then you've got, he's got a sergeant, and I don't remember what else was in there for new positions, would be this 137 merit. And then those were the merit that we moved over from newly created in 19 and 20. And then I used the, this is the sheriff retirement for the ones that we moved over, which now it's just the merit, of course. And so now that is something, maybe it's the closest thing to Roland's little magic bullet I've got, that we can then lower the general fund by $116,000 for sheriff retirement, because we're going to be pulled a little bit out of here.
we're spending 2 million on the sheriff's department.
Correct.
$500,000, a little less than $500,000 on community corrections. It's all
And
staffing.
prosecutor, we've got some that we pulled out from before, and some that are for the new court and whatever.
Yep.
Probation, they got the new probation officer there, and then there's one, this is the court service person that we created last year for the evaluator. And then this is the health insurance for all the different folks that are now paid out of here.
So it's personnel and the cars is the majority, the vast.
Virtually all.
All,
Now, there's a
okay.
few little operating in community corrections, they have a few things, but yeah. So right now, we have a $33,000 difference. But that would be, then we're gonna maintain our cash balance, or if not build on it a little bit,
Right,
so.
right.
Okay. Everyone satisfied with that?
Is that what we thought we would do when we approved the tax last year? I
We've
think
certainly,
so,
we've
but-
added, yeah, I would say so.
I just want to make sure that,
Yes. We have, I
Personal
think we have
question.
made the county safer than what we did before, at least on our part of the world.
Okay. Then we'll move back to general fund. And I believe we left off getting ready for the coroner's office.
On page 23?
Page 23.
Ben and I have had conversations with the coroner, with Donna, as you know, who is recuperating, as well as then Carrie in her office, and you will see the budget presented as such. Little increase in part-time. That office has run a lot of volunteers, less volunteers. They are doing some cleanup and some changes in that office, so Ben and I felt that this was a reasonable budget to start with. The Personnel Committee, as well as Ben and myself, will be working with the elected coroner to look to see staffing levels and salaries. So we would ask for this to be approved.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So no changes on that budget then? Alrighty. Emergency management.
Same thing, Ben and I met with Smokey. I guess for one clarification, if you looked at your budget, you will see line item 3610 and line item 3620. We questioned that because this year there's money budgeted one and not the other. It was just put in the wrong spot. So the $12,000 needs to go into maintenance and repair out of repair and building maintenance.
Okay. Alrighty.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Ben, I think, is
Yeah,
that?
that was all.
Is that it? Okay. Then on over to the sheriff's general fund budget. We have some changes that we obviously made with shifting over personnel and so forth over to lit public safety. What other changes did we have?
Sheriff's retirement, the $10,000 needs to go to the service fee fund.
Okay. So reduce that by 10,000.
Oh, shoot. I can do, how can I do that and see my comment at the same time? 10,571.
Mm-hmm.
I think I should just move my stuff up here.
I know, I
And
think.
and then we had
Yeah.
116,000.
Clean,
Sheriff.
Yeah,
Law
10,000.
enforcement. Yes, on the sheriff retirement.
You will see a jump in contracts and institutional care, 31-45 to $250,000, and that's for some new programming. It is my understanding that will be happening. And was there a nurse and some other
Yeah, there's a nurse
things?
and other things. There's other, signed the paperwork for a grant, several $1 million for other programming, not only educational, but through drug abuse and medication-assisted treatment that we will be doing at some point. Providing life skills and things like that for them. It's something our quality correctionals come up with. It's called, I believe it's Q360. Jumped on board with it last year, and they've been building it. Just there hasn't been much said about it because it's all new, but we'll be one of few departments in the state doing it. I jumped in right away. It's a great opportunity. It should save us a lot of money. Quality's taking care of all the grant work and all of that, and providing all the employees, and it'll happen right in our facility. We all want to cut money, right? So.
Well,
Right, we have another cut for
Yeah.
your postage, $1,100.
Take that down to 1,000.
Yeah.
I don't see the line for the helicopter.
The one question we had when we met with the sheriff, some of these, you see utilities in both places, the 3510, and you will also see utilities in the county jail. The explanation is that's the phones.
Yeah, there's two different phones. The other thing you're gonna notice for utilities, we didn't raise anything this year. Last year we kept everything the same this year. We did raise things for the jail, medical obviously and things like that, because those always go up. Utilities. One thing that we did at the jail, we had money left over last year, if you will. So I had Vinny purchase LED lights. We have some big, Tony can tell you the proper term for this, but they're big energy guzzling lights. So we purchased all the LED lights to replace them, used the contract for man hours this year to install those. And so this month was the first month we actually saw the bill for all that. We saved $5,000. So if that keeps happening, we're gonna save some money there just by switching to LED. So yes, that went up because utilities, their fees are gonna go up, but hopefully we can save money by switching that. We're slowly switching the cells over to LED as we can.
And then the other thing that is in the sheriff's budget, and I've asked our attorney if he would speak to this, is the elected official salary. If you'll note, there's an increase, and I think Doug is going to speak to the group about the statute.
All right, so the sheriff's salary is a weird construct. There's three basic ways a sheriff can get paid. The original one had to do with budgeting a per diem for food. Whatever's left over, he keeps. And there's some tax warrant commissions that go into that, and then it wouldn't be a normal salary. That's, in my opinion, from the bad old days, and we don't do that anymore. The second is a contract between the sheriff and the county, and that can be whatever they agree on, subject to a statutory maximum. And then the third way is, doesn't matter whether the sheriff agrees or not, the council can appropriate a certain amount of money, and it's staggered by population. But in our case, it's 90% of what a full-time prosecutor makes. The question was posed to me, what does that mean the elected prosecutor? Can that mean a deputy prosecutor? And if you read the statute that's talking about the sheriff, I understand why people would think it might be a deputy prosecutor or something, but if you actually go into how they talk about prosecutors being paid, which is a different statute, I'm really confident that it's the elected prosecutor. So anyway, as you read that statute, unless the parties want to agree to something else, then sort of the default setting for payment of a sheriff in Indiana in a county of our size is 90% of what a deputy prosecutor makes, or I'm sorry, of what the elected prosecutor makes. So I think we've been paying sheriffs in the past on just sort of an agreement. It hasn't been sort of the standard amount. So the wisdom of how you guys want to proceed with that, it's a policy issue, but you have those three statutory schemes. And then I guess the last thing to throw in is there is a maximum where you can't pay them more than 100% of what a elected prosecutor makes.
Okay.
Is this what other counties are doing of our size? Like, is this what Vanderburgh County is doing? And
Bob looked it up, and counties our size. I'll let Bob speak on that.
Let me, okay, I wasn't prepared for that, but
Vanderburgh is probably the closest.
Yeah, while he's pulling that up, the other thing.
yeah, where's that?
The sheriff can do, if you're not, if say in our case it's 90%, and the contract I've signed is 80. And part of that contract is, I don't want to take the tax warrant money, which you're entitled to make up that gap. I don't want to deal with it. That money comes back to the county. This, by making it 90, there is no gap. Once your population reaches 200,000 people, which I'm pretty sure we're there, then that's where it knocks into the 100%.
was looking in the wrong spot here. I can't, that's why I'm looking in the wrong spot.
I was gonna say, I'm not sure I'd be able to figure out which one you're trying to get to.
This is information that the various county auditors send into AIC, and they put together this fact book. And this is a section on the elected salaries, and it goes by population. So this first section here is the 150,000, if you can see that, if I can make it any bigger. And all right, I can still see that much and get sheriff in there. The 150,000, when you look at the sheriff salaries, for the people that are 150,000 or more population, the NS is those auditors who just didn't turn in their information, but we are the lowest of anybody with a population of 150,000 or more, you can see.
So, based upon that, we're obviously.
Based upon that, I mean, yeah, this would put him more in line with what counties our size are paying.
And I don't know, there's some of those sheriffs I've talked to, I don't know exactly offhand which ones that do take the tax amount money. I'm not interested in that at all.
But if these counties were using the same statute, I mean, they should be the exact same amount of salary, because prosecutor makes the same in Vanderburgh County or St. Joe County is what they do here. But, so, I mean, there's a variation of what people are doing, but certainly the salary that he's requested does not seem out of line.
Well, there is a statutory provision where counties can pay prosecutors more, and I don't know
So
if
that's through the 5,000 like they do judges?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, I didn't look into it,
Yeah.
but that could be the reason for the variation.
Thoughts from council?
I don't have a problem with it. What I do have a problem with is the rest of our elected officials, if not bound by statute, being paid the same. And I think it's high time, past time, to look at that too. If we're going to be current with counties of our size, we're definitely a large county in Indiana, and I think there's plenty in that chart that says that should at least be looked at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Roland, making a suggestion that realizing that the salaries cannot be changed during the year, but maybe this is something that the Personnel Committee should continue to look at, because we are going to be looking at the coroner and that office on the end of the year, because we may come back to you and there may be a recommendation, because there is by statute that particular salary could be, because it would be the first year of the term, so, of a newly elected official. So yes, we will take that under advisement to the Personnel Committee and take that task under as well.
Thank you.
And do we want that to go to personnel, or would that be something that the council would want to do as a body together?
For the elected officials?
Yeah,
What I was
for
thinking
elected
is the
officials.
Personnel Committee could look at it and bring a recommendation to the council, and then we have this discussion.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. Okay, we will certainly do that. Yes.
Yes, we are.
So we're back on page 24.
24?
I don't think anybody changed.
You can get rid of that. That was gonna be for some computers and such.
Okay.
And talk with Melissa, we'll figure out something.
And
Okay.
overall, are you pushing commissary as hard as you can?
We are, trying not to drain it.
'Cause as you see, we've still got, we're getting closer, but
There's a lot of things that we took, Paul, that we took, and we're gonna pay out of commissary that we're allowed to by law. There's other things, we are trying to do for our people as far as their safety and health with uniforms that we're looking at, that we can pay for out of commissary, that we can do it like a one-time deal and then maintain it with our uniform budget according to state board of accounts. Those are things we're looking into.
Sheriff, can you pull the microphone over? Please. Thank you.
See, I,
Okay,
you're
go
going
ahead.
just fine, but.
Trained well.
Go ahead.
Can we look at line 2215, supplies and garage and fleet?
Yes.
If we are looking at 20 new vehicles for next year, is there any decrease in that line based upon new vehicles?
There very well could be. An understanding, I don't know the conversation you just had back there because I was doing something else.
No, we were just looking at the price of the cars, so.
Yeah, so the other parts of the vehicle, a lot of the light packages and the other additional fees, we end up taking out of the
Okay.
garage fund. All the oil changes, everything comes out of that.
Okay. So maybe hold tight,
I would hold tight on that for now,
okay.
if we can, because you just don't know.
But we were planning on the light packages and so forth for all the new vehicles coming out of.
Right, and that was a conversation I walked up on later. If that's all the money is there, then yes, you could take some money out of that.
It should be, we're trying to get the total cost of the
Yeah.
vehicle, so.
Right.
If it is, you
That's
could,
why we addressed that right.
if it's the total cost, then you could probably drop that. Terry, you were involved in that whole conversation when I was in another one.
50?
They're absorbing the cost and lit with all the things that go in a vehicle. We could deduct 80,000 out of this. Correct? Yes. Yes. Take it down 80,000.
Say 280,000?
No, we said.
Helicopter's 200,000.
288,000.
288,000, okay, 280,000 is what you need? That is the price of a helicopter, so go ahead and get rid of that helicopter.
Okay, so
Okay, so
80,000.
You take that down 80, yes.
Okay. Okay.
We're getting close.
Who do you use for helicopter?
We don't, we've used Finley before.
Jeff?
Twice now, we've used him.
No, Jeff's your man.
Yeah, he's been great. He took us up and didn't crash. It was wonderful. He was very helpful during the protests, extremely helpful to be able to have another eye in the sky and tell us where people are moving and all that. He's wonderful.
Everything
Yeah.
here, the new positions and social security and everything.
Yeah, that automatically kicks out, yeah.
Did
Other
we take-
professional services, can you talk a little bit about that line, Bob? What's all in there?
That's our medical.
Okay.
So that's an additional nurse plus,
Yeah, that's the new contract.
yeah,
That was, it was at the beginning of this year or last year, we did that.
yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Does that include the costs that we weren't paying for that we should have been paying for? You know what I'm talking about?
The costs that we weren't paying.
We were finding that there were some costs that you came to us with an appropriation.
Yeah, what happened with that, if we're talking about the same thing, is we have very sick people in our jail, and there was medical costs that we just didn't expect. And, I mean, that could happen again. It can happen to any jail in the state. We have for those that don't know, if you haven't been out, we have a very large jail that a lot of people in the community don't realize, but the people in our jail are sick with mental health issues and substance abuse and things like that. So that's why we came back for the reappropriation.
And correct me if I'm wrong, anytime there's any type of a hospitalization or whatever, we are responsible for paying that.
Yes, and quality goes through a thing where they look at the bills and how to bill the inmates and figure out ways around all that. They have a staff of people that they do that for us, and they've saved us, that's a few $1 million over the years doing that for us, which has been wonderful.
Has the $1,000 per employee been taken out of this already?
Yes.
Well,
'cause
that was at public
Yeah,
safety,
lit public
Okay.
safety.
so, and it was taken out of
All
there.
right.
Because that was when we were discussing the vehicle situation,
Yeah.
Because all
Yeah.
of that was put in public
Was in
safety.
that, okay.
No matter where, if they were paid from here, that's what the request was.
All right,
Okay, good.
Anything else?
I think we're all set there unless you can think of
Anything on
anything
jail?
Well, we
else.
have jail, anybody questions?
Anything on
about-
jail, I think there weren't any changes.
Those were the
there.
only things where we made increases. We kept what we just went over, it was the same as last year. The jails where we had to increase simply because there's going to be an increase. Food, and supplies and things like that. We go through jail supplies like crazy, a lot. Anything else? That may have been the shortest time I was up here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, community corrections. Looks like Jason's coming up.
Yep.
Ben, do you have notes of what all we had talked about?
It's one of the things that we talked about when Kevin and I met with Jason. We touched on this a little bit, moving some of the new positions into lit, reducing, when you look at the budget as presented, 3145, the professional services medical, the 2020 budget was at 26,000. He's requesting zero this year. One of the new positions is a nurse at paid out of lit. So the hope is that some of the substance abuse, some of the diabetes, some of the other challenges, health challenges that they face there can be handled with community corrections in the new position.
Thank you.
I'll let, Jason's got more data he just handed out to give you guys to justify some of these.
I had a note that the 25,000 from the cleaning and laundry, the 2230, that was being absorbed into the professional services.
Yes.
Is that what you were talking about, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was one of the other changes. Yeah, it got kind of just shifted
Yeah.
to different line item.
So just a couple of things that I wanted to point out this morning. It was in 2017, I believe, that we began receiving money from the council. And we appreciate that funding source as we continue our operations. The reason that we began that request and ultimately getting funded was to help reduce the jail population. That was the driving force behind it. And so I wanted to share just a little bit of data about what that investment that the county's made on our behalf and on behalf of the whole county. So in October of 2017, we began the community integration program, moving community corrections eligible inmates from the jail onto community corrections. They were primarily not, prior to that, moved because of back fees. That was the typical reason as to why they were sitting in jail. So it didn't seem to me to make sense to have somebody just sitting in jail because they couldn't pay fees. We had an overcrowded jail at the time. We had space and work release, so it seemed to be a common sense approach to solve the problem. From October 7th of 2017 through just through our current date, we've moved 1,207 inmates from the jail onto community corrections. So from a jail population point, I think it hit that check mark of what we were trying to accomplish. The idea of getting somebody onto the community integration program is to do that, to get them back integrated into our community, to get them hooked onto our services, and then connect them with employment and opportunities to reduce their financial obligations to the county, while also feeding a workforce that our employers in this county desperately need. So there's 1,200 people during that time that have obtained jobs and are working for any number of employers in our county. So what impact it has on our community corrections in our county as a fiscal agency has far-reaching effects just as our community. These are individuals are now putting money into our public safety tax and all these other programs that we're funding. So the flip side of that is, well, what have we gotten out of it from a county point? Well, we've recouped $321,553.56 during that time, and it's broken down into what agencies got paid back fees that more than likely would have never been paid. And so that's a huge relief, financial relief for those individuals that owe various county entities back fees, as well as obviously reimbursing those county entities that now have that money that they would not have had before. So I wanted to share that information with you to show that your investment is not for without some return. So not 100%, but I think we're far better off in a lot of regards than what we were. The second page that you have there kind of goes along with the lines of the nurse that we're asking for. So much like the sheriff just mentioned, we have a lot of individuals that require medical attention. We currently just have corrections officers that triage the best that we can, but we aren't in the medical business. Unfortunately, that business comes at a hefty cost to many entities within the county. So I ran some stats just to see how much resources we were using in the medical field with T's. And you can see the breakdowns from 2016 through August 22nd of this year. We have had 807 medical runs to our facility. That's 807 times that an ambulance is off the road to deal with complaint of pain, a toothache, minor medical issues. Now, there's some legit medical issues that need to go on, but we are wasting a lot of money and some valuable resources that are off our street at the tone of, I've averaged $746,000 of what it would cost a T's truck between a BLS and an ALS truck that have come to our facility during that time. I'm asking for a $55,000 investment on behalf of the county through public safety for a nurse for 5 days a week, 5 to 6 hours a day to help triage the good majority of this. And I'm confident that we can significantly reduce the amount of calls that we are receiving to our facility. So I'm happy to answer any other questions or anything related to these items or the general request.
Jason, a question about your nurse. If you're going to have her 5 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, how are you going to staff that? Because do you know, when you look at your runs, what is the time frame? Are these calls primarily at night? Are they evening?
It varies. I mean, we could have a nurse there 24 hours a day. I mean, there's no set standard or there's no consistent time as to when they are. My thought is to get them in there and then fluctuate that time as best suited. I mean, obviously morning times are not as prevalent as in the evening hours, so we'd want to maximize that but we're just going to have to kind of play those hours by ear.
So primarily you'll have, because primarily when you think about your clients, they're out of the facility during the day. So your nurse is going to be primarily, then you're going to have her work, like anywhere from 3 to 11 at night.
So like a mid-shift type thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's something we'll have to work with Quality Correctional on as well. And that'll be the good portion is it's also with Quality Correctional who services the jail. So we have a lot of obviously movement back and forth between our facilities. So as far as any kind of continuation or treatment of care or conversations between the two entities, I think it streamlines that for everyone's benefit. Okay. Thank you.
Is there any revenue that should be going to the general fund, or is there revenue that's, if it was going through the clerk, I wouldn't know, but, because we've got a commitment here, and if you're getting any fees back for people that are in the community corrections program and their expenses are basically the personnel's paid from the general fund, where's the revenue going?
The back fees are going in, are typically user fees. And so those user fees are what's assessed and what we
Is that up until the point where they were moved from the jail over to you? I mean, because is it user fees? But if it's user fees and the expenses are coming out of the general fund should be receiving that money and not going into the user fee fund. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I do and I don't. I mean, all back fees, all fees that
If they're back fees before,
all back fees that they're assessed are fees for back user fees. And
but
so-
are they charged fees current for if they're in there today, are they charged for a fee to be in there today? They're not?
No,
Okay.
they're not.
Okay.
That's part of being on the CIP program is that they don't obtain user fees while they're on.
Okay, okay. And I wondered about a line or two, like mileage, travel mileage, and like the 3620, the vehicle maintenance, those are a lot higher than what we have used. It's real, the appropriations are less than what were granted for 20, but when you look at the actual, you know, and I'm looking at, we still have to cut $211,000, would like to.
Yeah.
And are those still higher than what is absolutely necessary?
For 3620?
Yeah, you've got a $7,000 request. I mean, you did have, end up 17.7 is what you have for this year's budget. But even just looking at, you're not that far off, but the first half of the year you used 2,600. And the year
I mean,
before.
that goes far, I mean, that's oil changes and tires and just general maintenance for our fleet. So we brought it down a pretty significant amount. I wouldn't want to go down too terribly much more than what we have.
How many vehicles do you have?
And I estimate about 20.
But your 21 request is not that far away from triple what you used the first half of the year.
Well, and the travel and mileage is the same way.
Yes, yes.
It's significantly higher because it's been running, at least in 19, it was a little over $1,000. 18 was a little over 400.
And if we need to shave, I don't mind shaving a little bit off if we need to.
I'm not talking about very much, but yeah,
Right.
just every little bit would help if you,
You take
it's a
that,
difficult year to have cushions in there, and I know you always want a little cushion to move things around a little bit, but for both of those things are both in the 3 series, so we can move them around easily
Right.
without having to go to council, so.
And do you want to take 1,000 off each? Does that help?
I was gonna say, could you take it down to 5,000, since you've only used so far $1,100?
Mm-hmm. Take them both down to 5.
Or even if you move the travel down to 5 and left the other one alone,
Yeah.
you put the 2 together and it's,
Same.
That's fine.
Good, thank you.
How much, 5?
Mm-hmm.
down to 5.
Down to 5.
And what is the, maybe you covered this, but I didn't get one of those sheets, but the legal 3110?
So that includes our contracts with Lexpool, who we contract with for our policy and procedure manual, and Target Training Solutions, who tracks all of our required trainings related to that policy manual.
And is that paid at the end of the year or something? Because we've never spent any money out of that line.
Yeah, I believe that bill gets paid right at the first or the end of the year.
And so it would be higher for 21 than it is for 20?
Right, because we just added the Target Solutions.
Okay, okay.
So we didn't have that last year.
It's tougher to be department number 55 than I'm department number 1 when, you know. Now we're getting to the end, so, okay, you're going to pay for it.
I'm happy to switch you if you want.
No, I have to set the tone, so.
But I will point out that the overall budget request from 20 to 21 is over $30,000 less.
And we've tried to be, obviously,
Just to be
We
upfront.
try to
and
only
clear.
ask for what we need, and don't put in, just like every other department. And we're trying to be very fiscally responsible with what we do, and public safety taxes allowed us to move some items that I think are appropriate to pay out of that. So,
All right. Thanks,
All
Jason.
right, thank you, Jason.
We're not gonna look at the public safety portion of his budget
Well, that's what we did.
earlier
Yeah.
yesterday?
Well, we looked at it again just a little bit ago. I guess we could look at it again if you'd like
Well,
to.
he was talking about the nurse,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in there?
Yeah.
so under
Right there in
under
that
professional services, so
3145 line.
Okay.
It's in there.
So that 81,000 includes a nurse as well as their oversight of our medication program,
Okay.
both with Quality Correctional.
Okay, we were looking at the general
Yep.
budget at the time, so.
Yeah.
And then the full-time positions would be those that were created this year.
And that's the mental health counselor and the addictions counselor?
Yes.
And, okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. All right. Next up is clerk. Did we
We went through that
do
yesterday.
that yesterday, didn't we?
Yep.
That prosecutor,
Prosecutor, did we do 40 and ancillary?
we didn't do ancillary, but there are no changes in ancillary.
Okay,
That's holding steady, as you can see here.
yep. And we did public defender, probation, magistrate.
No changes. You can see he's got it locked down. Minor expenses besides the people cost.
Okay. Did we do 40? We did, didn't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I thought we did. I was just trying to keep my head.
Circuit court.
Circuit court.
Again, no changes. If we need 500, he said he could reduce his dues and subscriptions to 2,000, but that's holding the same for this year. So, pleasure of the council, if 500 is going to make a difference, we can do it. If not, I'd just leave it where we are budgeted for this year.
Every little bit at this point, when we're still
Every little
201,
right.
208 or whatever it is away.
All right, so make that 2,000.
Okay,
We made our mark.
made our mark. That's right. We did something. We already did Superior 1, Superior 2.
Hold on just a second.
Are you on
Okay,
Superior
um,
Yeah, I thought Roland was looking at notes.
Yeah, Superior 2, we don't have any changes, right, Lisa?
No, I think the one concern people had was about the Long Center for juries and how long, just a question about, right now where that's being paid for by the commissioners, and there was just some concern about how long we're gonna keep paying for that, because they did really, really like that, so. I don't know how that's being paid for today. Is that being paid for by the,
The Long
Commissioners or the
Center,
care-
where are you guys paying that out of?
who cares? Okay. And we expect that to keep going as long as we need? Right now it ends December 31st. Okay.
It is not real cheap, in my opinion. Yes, I mean, because I thought initially the contract was like $400 a day, but then, well, do you want the lights on and do you want the PA? And it's like, almost like we bought some candles with no wicks, but the wicks are what's expensive. But anyway, it's, one thing, if I can jump in there, we had gone through the budgets and there was not a salary, and on the salary statement, there was not a part-time rate, and he had a $750 in there. I received an email from Judge Meyer back on July 10th saying, drop the request for the part-time. Because I was trying to, okay, here, we just need to, we'll send you a salary statement, we just need to get a rate for part-time.
If he's already given that to you, then you
was-
could go ahead and do that.
Okay. So that's the extent of the changes in Superior 2, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Superior Court 4.
So in working through, again, the PD office changes the last few years, and seeing that they've got good support for 4, we'll reduce the pauper line from 30,000 to 5,000.
But then she wanted the professional services up to 2.
Correct, and that's, yeah.
So the 3190, is that the one you're
Yes.
talking about?
3190 would go to 2. We did ask about travel and training, and she did make a higher request, but also noted that there's a new judge is going to be in that court, and I would anticipate training for that judge. So leaving it at 1,500 would be appropriate, and then reduce jury from 5 to 4,000. Is that what you had, Lisa?
Yep, yep.
Same notes.
Okay.
What about, did they have any discussion with me? This is one thing that always concerns me when you're having a new judge or new department head. Office supplies at $750, and having changed offices a couple times, just file stamps are quite expensive, and would they be buying letterhead or envelopes or anything like that? That, it just seems like $750 is kind of low with what they know new judge in a court.
Didn't anticipate that, even though she did anticipate the training. I'd just leave it here and make that new judge work hard for find and transfer
Yeah, okay,
opportunities.
yeah.
Good point, though, Bob.
Okay.
We did 5.
Did 5. And did we,
We didn't finish 6.
did we not finish 6?
So on 6, besides the overtime line, we did agree that dues and subscriptions could be taken from $2,500 to $1,750. Would note that there are paper case law updates that are still used by this court, so that's why that number is what it is at $1,750. But the only other change would be the potential, and what I believe we need to have an open discussion about is the overtime.
Do the two of you have a particular recommendation? Not to put you on the hot seat or anything, but
So we understand that this is a broad issue because it affects budget, but it affects policy, how comp time is handled, how time is reported, how time is tracked, which involves HR, and interface with the clerk's office. Because the clerk, as you know, has her employees serving in each of the courts. And because we have 3 court reporters down there, we have 2 clerk positions in that court. And the second was added when we added the court reporter. Now, whether that could be 1 or 1.5 is to be discussed. Before we jump to, I've got strong feelings about this, and I'll be happy to share them, as you may know, but you all heard a lot of that for the first time yesterday, and I don't know what struck you, but it's clear the court is extremely busy. It's the highest of high-volume courts. But that's really not what's before us, is whether they're busy or not. It's whether we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. So I would just want to clarify, then I'd like council thoughts, and then I'll come back with my recommendation. Lisa can offer any thoughts too, but Judge Morrissey respectfully mentioned the annual fight that he and I have, and I would just clarify that it's not a fight. But this year, things got sideways when the simple question was asked, with these rising costs and these decreasing cases, many of which are infractions which never see the courtroom, what has been done to evaluate other processes, other courts, and what has been implemented in your court to make it more efficient? Because we're clearly going different directions here. And that's when the differences of opinion began to emerge in a pretty evident way. So that was the basis of the disagreement. So whereas all of that was said yesterday is true, most of what was said yesterday is true, it was a snapshot of busyness, but it's been busier by caseload standard in years prior than it is now. And in particular, how do you get an additional 200 comp time hours since the beginning of the year when the cases dropped off and nobody was in the courtroom for a period of time? So one comment was made about longevity and cost. Bob, would you bring that table up? Did want to set the record straight. These are the positions in each court. It is not longevity that causes the salaries line to increase for 6 over 4 and 5. If you remember the chart from yesterday, 4 and 5 just like they trail each other, and this is why. You can see those costs are, I mean, right now pretty much in line between 4 and 5, but what's clear is the court reporters, the 2 in each court, are paid the same. The 3rd in 6 is the 3rd, where the other courts do not have that person. The bailiff is paid the same in 6 as it is in 4. 5 is a little less, so there is maybe some longevity at play there, I'm not sure. But the administrative, and again, they carry different titles in each court, but that administrative person is paid the same in 4 and 6. So it's not a longevity issue that drives those lines apart. It's the fact that they've got a lot more salary, part-time and overtime costs in there. So what's before us is a request for $25,000 to pay out overtime in lieu of comp time, so you can reset the comp time clock to 0 that's just going to build again if no operational changes are made. So then that's where it gets really sticky. How do we deal with that? Because we can say no to the, and then it's going to get nasty. I absolutely respect the courts and the judges' statutory obligation to manage that court and its operations. But if there's no evidence of changes with the advent of Odyssey a few years ago, and many in other courts have implemented many things that it appears this court may not have, and without being able to cite any evidence of efficiency changes, I think we have to figure out a way to work with them and help them get to this, or else we've got a situation, we're going to be back at this 2 years from now approving more overtime because of comp time that got out of control. I'll pause there and I'll make a recommendation. I know we both thought a lot about it. You guys had just got hit with it yesterday, but if you got challenges to what I just said about the evaluation of how it looks and what may or may not be happening or what opportunities may or may not be there, please fire away. We want to answer them, but
thoughts from council?
Well, go ahead.
The one question I have, I know we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but with the new court coming on board, after the discussion, it was my understanding that they're going to be taking some of that caseload, but a limited amount. Is that correct?
a very small amount.
Okay.
The operating when suspended will go, which if they come in as a infraction that stays in 6, it goes to misdemeanor level, which from what I understand is like if you do it twice, it becomes a misdemeanor and it goes up to 7. But yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
The weighted caseload thing, nobody's ever at 1. So that whole thought, I mean, we're at 11.5 for the county. We've got 7 courts today, so we're adding 1. We're not going to get to 1. Nobody does.
Right.
But at our heaviest weighted court is that one at 2.0. Now, that's not our decision on what cases go to 7. And I know they are going to figure it out, so they've come up with an original plan that could be modified. But to your point, Jody, that's an opportunity, but I don't think that's going to happen at least in the next year.
I guess.
Superior Court number 5, it's the next on the list, next in line. What's their overtime like?
Yeah, so just roll up there, even with just 2 court reporters, they have 0
Yeah.
and no part-time. Again, the nature of the courts is completely different, but yet Odyssey came in, you don't see blips, they figured it out. There are features in Odyssey that I understand 6 chooses not to use in its ability to template orders that the judge would make. There are functions within the software that can be used to generate orders based on templates, not from scratch each and every time one is issued. It's things like that that as soon as we start asking those questions, it gets declared a fight or we get accused of micromanaging. But our only option is to manage the cost and encourage them to figure it out. So that's our trick, is how do we do that?
A couple of things. You know, I look at, you know, they're building, I don't understand, they're building comp time, and yet they haven't used any overtime this year, but they're allowed to build the comp time. So I don't understand that management of employees. And then, you know, part of our job as a council is to give departments the tools that they need to be more efficient. So we have spent money on the tools, as well as training to train our employees to use the tools. But it seems like that there's a breakdown somewhere in either, is it a lack of training? Is it that I just don't want technology? I want to see it on paper. So I think there's a systemic problem, and I think that's, how do you get to that systemic problem and correct it, utilizing the tools that we have?
I think this council has always been one to want to help.
Right.
And we couldn't get to a mutual understanding of what the opportunities were, which is why we opened the door for the judge to present yesterday. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And if Judge Morrissey is watching this, I want him to make sure that he understands. I understand, looking at the data, that he is busy. I get it. It is busy. That's why he has an additional person in his court versus the others. So we have addressed that and realized he is busy.
And it is acknowledged, when Odyssey came in 16-ish timeframe, it was an overwhelming thing. They have unique things. They've got BMV system orders that have to be made. Obviously, they're the only traffic court, so they have the burden of bearing with the BMV that the clerk's office helps with. There was a lot there. So I don't remember which county, but there was another county that we invited, part of that big overtime year, them to come in and look at how 6 was doing things. And I do differ in my opinion of what came out of that. That person came in and said, yeah, you've got the system, you know what you're doing. Did we ask that person to make the system most efficient for our court? No. And so the question is, can they use it, was answered by us bringing that person in. The question of, did we optimize when we've got costs going like this with no end in sight? No, we did not. So however we figure out how to go forward, if providing further tools to get them over this hump, that I'm open to that, but they got to be willing to change. It's just it's about as plain as day to me. And now, if it's not as plain as day to you, tell me why, because I can't. We've looked at it for a long time, and we just can't figure it out.
For me, my biggest concern is the fact that we were seeing the comp time continuing to rise even as the courthouse was closed. That was a real red flag in my opinion. And that doesn't seem to add up, that we've got some sort of an issue going on with respect to how things are being managed, if that was going on.
We didn't ask them that, did
We did. There was certainly time, they pointed out, and it's accurate, that in the old days, pre-COVID, on hearing day, the doors would open and you were summoned to be at court if you chose to not pay your infraction. You were summoned to be at court at X time, during that window. You show up. People are just flowing in and out of that room. Well, because of COVID, now they limit that. They have to. And so they've got to do more monitoring of that. There's no doubt that takes more time. In my book, though, the courtroom was still open the same amount of hours, and so that had an impact for sure, but probably a limited impact. But for it to go up from 300 to 500 in the course of 6-7 months, when their downtime was there, just seemed a bit of a stretch, yes. But it all goes back to what's being done to improve efficiency and productivity, and with lack of evidence of anything, we should anticipate these costs will continue to go up and that we'll be back here again like on something of overtime. Did I miss something or misstate something? Okay.
No.
It's a head scratcher. So recommendation, again, the judge is going to have to come to the table. The judge does not have to come to the table. We can have a standoff, and I certainly will vote against overtime. They've got a comp time system. My understanding is an employee who already hit the max at 250 already took 25 hours of comp time, so that employee's balance is now down to 215, or whatever 250 minus 25 is.
225.
That'd be 225.
Yeah.
Hey, math numbers are hard. Whether that's there or not, I don't know. But boy, it opens up a can of worms, does it not, to just say, hit your comp time, we're going to pay you overtime on a regular basis. So my recommendation, and hoping that the judge would understand the spirit in which this is intended, we have him and key employee or employees come to the table with the clerk, council reps, a commissioner rep, HR, and representatives from 4 and 5 who don't fight the system as much, to offer suggestions and ask questions in the spirit of collaboration to help them. Not to punish them, not to tell them they don't know what they're doing, just simply to say, we've got a system here that's worked pretty well everywhere else in our courthouse. What can we do? That would be my recommendation, and I hope that the judge and his staff would be willing to do so.
So what do we have in terms of a recommendation on what we do with this particular number?
I recommend it be 0. If through the process of meeting with them, there's some epiphany, I still think it's opening a can of worms to start paying overtime for comp time when we have such a robust system that seems to be working well other places. To make an exception here, I just think is a slippery slope.
Is that a motion? Do we want to do this one as a regular motion and vote?
That might be appropriate given the nature of this particular subject. If
There's no way 7 picks up any slack.
Could they, your question, could 7 pick up slack? They could, that's that's the judges making local rule. It's their prerogative, their obligation to do. It certainly could come with a request from us and possibly others to say, have you maxed that out? Because this is where we are heaviest. So that could be an element, but I think the key element is still this other issue. If the council would be interested in a motion, I would move that we do not, at this point, include any money in the overtime budget for 6 in 2021, and that we do request that the court meet with us in an effort to find efficiency and productivity in participating with the other departments that I suggested.
I second the motion.
Okay, I've got a motion on the floor from Councilman Winger, second from Councilwoman Dolam, to cut the overtime line for Superior Court 6 to 0, with the understanding that we would be working with that court, with the appropriate folks from council, commissioners, other courts that were named, in order to help them gain the efficiencies that they need to in order to address this issue. Is that an
Correctly
appropriate
stated.
reinstatement or restatement of your motion?
Yep.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
yes,
Okay.
discussion.
So what if we do that, which I think that's a great idea and that we do, but what if we do that and we do find that there is some overtime that's needed? So what happens at that point? How are they able to?
We could appropriate if it's in 2020, we could,
Additional.
and we could appropriate in 2021.
Right, additional appropriation if needed at
Okay.
that point.
Great
So
question.
they still have that option?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
that's still not.
Originally,
ever
when this came up, it was a request, the original budget was 10,000 request.
Right.
And then, well, I think originally the thought was possibly to just ask for the additional appropriation now. And then I think it got, but then when the 15,000 increment between 10 and the original request and 25 now was calculated around this outstanding amount that's there in total. So, yes, we could still act in those manners. So it's not an ultimate no, but it's there's a lot to be worked through here before we'd want to say yes in any form.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
any other discussion? Everyone comfortable with the motion? With that being said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion is passed, and we will cut that to 0.
Can the record show that was unanimous, please?
Yes,
It will, it
please
will.
do so. It was unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Roland and Lisa, for helping pull the weight on that particular tough one, I know. Okay, anything additional that we need to address on Superior 6? I don't think that there is, and we already did Superior
Lower that one?
7, and we did 7, and we did 3, I think.
Yes,
Was there
we did
anything on
3.
3?
We did CASA.
And we did CASA.
With all the dues and
So I think
subscriptions
we're
and
ready for Health Department.
I think so. Bob, while she's coming up, can you roll back up to 6?
Oh,
We just want to make sure that dues and subscriptions did get moved to 1750.
Yep, we did.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
oh, I got the wrong one. Sorry.
Oh, and finally, on the courts, that does jump over to jury expenses. That's still got a decent balance. We didn't do any changing there, so all those that were requested were unchanged. Okay. Jury expenses, the other fund.
In the
Jury pay
jury,
fund.
in the jury pay fund?
Yeah.
Very good, okay.
The garbage is behind the pillar.
Health Department. Ben, do you have notes? I don't really have any.
I've got notes, but I don't see any changes. Looking through them. Some of the vaccine appointments just haven't been able to happen because of COVID from a revenue source, the mobile clinics.
Correct.
There's still, certificates are still being printed, birth certificates, death certificates.
I mean, every division besides the nursing division we've modified, but are still able to do those services. The nursing division sole focus right now is COVID-19 as expected. And so immunizations are not happening like we currently do. We have worked with providers and Riggs Community Health Clinic to still have those services in our community. We're just not able to do them currently. But everything else is business as usual, but maybe modified a little bit in how we do it.
So the final budget was down just a little bit
Yes, we did cut it, even though
Yeah.
we've been responding to COVID-19. So
Despite all the
just want to let you know.
additional activities, the budget was down about $3,000 from last year's budget.
With probably an increased workload, I would assume.
What, I'm sorry?
With the pandemic, the workload has, I would assume, significantly increased.
100% increased, yes. We're working 7 days a week to respond to, with no end in sight, unfortunately.
Right. So my recommendation is to keep the budget as presented.
Yeah, I didn't have any changes recorded either.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
How does the CARES, and this may be a question for Bob or the commissioner, how does the CARES money apply to operational costs for the health department, and do they flow through this?
So a lot of the medical supplies are going to be reimbursed that we spent in 2020 will be part of the CARES Act because it's been directly COVID-19 expenses.
So that
But we
would-
just don't know for 2021 what the CARES Act will be.
But for now, when they do come in, does that just flow back through as general fund revenue, Bob?
We have to have it appropriated.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, it will just go in as revenue. We have a line for
Yeah.
COVID, and if they need to come back, because not necessarily, you may be out of appropriation, they may need to come back, but we're gonna get some CARES Act money back without the appropriation to follow as an additional that.
Bob, on their income side of the equation, up on 0420, that was down about 100,000 from what we had estimated as income from the 2020 budget, but it looks like we're gonna fall short of that 2020 estimate anyway. How did the 327.5 number, how was it derived, I guess? Do you have any calculations on that?
And this came from them.
Yeah.
And so this is their breakdown of the type of revenues.
Which line number are you looking at?
The,
2.0, which we, the last three added together.
right. So it's the 120, the 65, and the 9,500 put together.
And the last column, and this is a state form, well, let's see, this, when did we get this? Did we not change? These dates up here aren't right. This is supposed to be July of 20 through
We
December.
caught that when we
Yeah.
were doing it,
So
but you said to submit it.
move those up another year. So this last column, you can really disregard that because that's 22, the first half.
Yep.
Oh,
22.
okay.
The middle column is 21, but we didn't get that changed. That's our fault, but
Okay.
anyway, so those are their numbers.
Okay. So that's the budget for the revenue for 21, the 327.5
Yes.
that's there. Okay. Okay, that helps me. You don't think there's, with all that's going on, the vaccinations, you think will be that?
I mean, it just depends, if there, come spring of 2021, if there's a vaccine for COVID-19, it's game on and we'll be vaccinating all day long and then back to normal immunizations and we'll have catch-up schedules to do. Because there is CDC catch-up schedules, and so we'll be working with the schools and in the schools doing catch-up. It's just really hard to know. There's no timeline for COVID-19 for us to get. So we took the conservative estimate.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. There's nothing else on Health Department? Thank you.
Thank you.
Insurance.
Yeah, we still need highway.
Oh. How did,
38.
38. Okay. We'll skip over Stu. Skip over to Stu, over
Oh,
to
was there no
page
change in
38.
our health insurance?
Well, unless, I think we're trying to go in department number order, and they're 80 compared to 94. There will be some change, there will have something on that.
Okay.
If we want to kind of go in the same order. Why? What? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome. See, we just gave you extra time to do this. Okay.
Thank you, Stu.
We're
Thank
starting
you.
with Cambridge.
Stu, do you have one more for
Stuart, do
Ben?
you mind if I grab one, please?
Poor Ben.
I know I'm missing a left hand, but I don't be left out either.
You're not my rep.
Yeah, he's looking out.
But he gets a vote.
No.
I have a good memory, just remember that.
I know your mother.
We all know your mother.
Yeah.
All right.
Ew, I think we're getting hungry.
All right. Let's get back to order here.
38. All right, here we go.
Here we go.
John
Somebody want
Bash,
to recommend approval?
are you up?
Somebody want to just recommend approval?
What notes do you all have? John and Jody?
John? What'd you say, John?
I was headed to the bathroom.
I think you might have did that during our meeting too. No, I'm kidding. Oh, shoot.
Questions?
Questions?
Yeah, Stu, I think it'd be good just for you to go through it. I mean, I definitely have notes, but more of informational notes for me as I'm learning this, so.
Well, Cume Bridge, that's our property tax fund. As the fund indicates, it's used for bridges primarily, drainage, structures, culverts. We're basically budget out our projected income. Since this is all infrastructure, all of our funds are just budgeted out to be used, get as much preservation and replacement as we can get done. We have gone through this year, and you'll see some prior years is zeroed and things have moved around. We're trying to simplify our budget process, trying to get things more into capital materials, into a more straightforward approach. But basically, Cume Bridges, we're budgeting the $2.68 million for those projects. Let me just keep going through the funds.
And there's no revenue showing because that's just, you didn't put it in there? I mean, there's gonna be revenue, right, for property tax in 2021?
Oh,
Just wanna
I think, yeah,
make sure that's, that's something I'm missing.
and I had put
28,
it's actually over, revenue's higher than our budgeted number.
what I've got in there, Lisa, I put in 98% of what I think, because a lot of that's based on once we had the assessed valuation certified. So I've got that 2,820,400, which is 98% of what I think the levy would be, just kind of assuming, you know, maybe a little tax cap and sort of thing that maybe, but because this is not one where he's going to be seeing some revenue losses.
yeah.
And LRS is one that we do project.
we're showing the 1.24 still in the column, but we're anticipating probably some additional losses and total budget of 1.12328. And this is the local road and street fund. A big part of that is gas tax, which is taking a hit. That was off the projections. Again, you'll see a lot of zeros where we're trying to consolidate the accounts. It takes a hit. The next,
What do you anticipate the impact being to our local streets and roads from this impact? What's
the biggest problem on all of these is that is the preservation work. You know, we've talked before when we were having different hearings about, we have commitments. This year was especially bad because we had a lot of commitments up front. We have a couple of commitments going into next year, but we've already accounted for them. And so basically it comes down to preservation and repair. We try to keep enough emergency funding in our budget for collapsed culvert or trees, you know, all those kinds of things that can happen. And we just hold it off in preservation, which means down the line we'll pay for it. You know, if we don't do crack seal this year, 2 years from now we'll have to go to a chip seal. If we don't do chip seal this year, 2 years from now we're going to have to pave. It's just not an efficient way to spend your money. You want to do more
So we're not
preservation.
going to be doing maintenance on our local roads
We're giving up.
that we would have if we hadn't had the COVID
Right.
hit?
Exactly. It will bite us down in the end. It will increase our cost of operation throughout. Major bridge is sort of a holding card. That's for those bridges over 200 feet. And we haven't actually gotten to funding a project yet. That hasn't built up. MVH is a little more challenged with the gas tax and more challenged with the distributions. So we're holding that down on our budget.
Hey, Stu, could I jump back real quick, just like, so I'd like to have council change that if that's okay. The property tax for major bridge, I'm saying, you know, and now we're just in the accumulation little phase here, but I think I'd like to raise that to, using the assessed valuation, because it's 1 cent is the rate, and that would be coming at $823,000 approximate levy and 98% of that. So, I mean, we could at least raise the revenue from property taxes to at least 800,000, if that would be okay. You know, what we put in here is not going to change anything in what we're going to get.
Right.
But just for budgeting purposes, it's more accurate, I think, as far as for a projection. Okay, all right, I'm done.
That's fine.
Can we pause on Major Bridge before we go ahead? Just what's the prospect, since that's a new fund to us, it's building well? When do you see major expenses starting to come out of that anytime soon?
Right. Right now, we're in design. The major expense will be the first bridge to be hit in the program is Davis Ferry, be a superstructure replacement. And I'm just waiting for enough money to pile up.
The order of how much? Guessing.
$3 million.
So we're
for the bridge.
Yeah.
We're talking about including pavement rehabilitation back to the city limits, which would build it up a little bit more, but.
Thank you.
We're getting close. I'm thinking within a year or two, we should definitely be able to do something. Then motor vehicle, and that's also got the double whammy of having to be split between restricted and unrestricted because of the legislation, and it's still at a 50-50 split, so that has ramifications through the whole budget. again, we're using the, not the State Board of Accounts, help me out, Bob, the projections that we get from,
It usually comes from the state auditor, I believe, doesn't it? And they're the ones that send that.
yeah, it's not the Board of Accounts, but it's a fancier, different. It's a state letterhead. It looks real official.
I think it's from the auditor of state, I think is the
Might
one
be.
who certifies that, Jared. That's what we usually get.
Anyway, then we have the surtax and wheel tax funds, which obviously are kind of across the board. We touch that for bridges when we need it, and we touch it for roads both. We have a cash balance built in that one, and that is basically accounts for County Road 500 North and Jaeger is going in January, and so is Lindbergh. So we'll be back to you in January as soon as those let to appropriate some of the cash we've been building in there. And that'll go away. I think that's about a lot of note.
Okay. Anything else? How is the, I mean, obviously, we know the impact of the no travel. How has the gas tax money coming back, and I'm looking at Tom, I know that there's been some discussions about some of that, of how that distribution has gone between the state and the counties. Has there been any more discussion related to that in terms of whether or not we are getting our fair share of the pie, so to speak?
So we had a legislative meeting last week with Commissioners Association, AIC. We had Farm Bureau and some other partners come in and speak as well. It seems our lobbyist is telling us that the legislature is not going to have an appetite for looking at that formula between NDOT and locals this year or the next session. But that doesn't mean we can't have those discussions with our local legislators. We cringe every time we hear that NDOT's doing a preservation project when we don't have the money to do anything, essentially. Right. NDOT is clearly getting a very large portion of that, and I don't think that was the intent of the legislature. But one thing that there is some appetite for is to reduce that 50% restriction on MVH that Stu mentioned to maybe a smaller number, 10, 25. We're pushing that it go away altogether because that really hinders us on what we can do locally. But we'll take anything we can get as far as that. But I think, unfortunately, that might be the only relief we get in the coming session is the reduction of that amount that's restricted.
Okay. Well, it's rather frustrating from my perspective when that whole thing was started with the idea being that we were going to start helping our local communities really work on infrastructure and rural roads and just roads in general. And then it seems like a lot of that money's been pulled off into the state, and we're not getting a fair shake of that, I don't think.
And Stu's done a good job of doing numbers. And in addition, LTAP has done a remarkable job doing a statewide study so that we can show that this is actually what's happening. But one of our guest speakers was Representative Brown, obviously the chairman of Ways and Means, and he, his take on it, because I specifically asked if there would be an appetite for it, he said, "You're still getting more than you were in 2016. Granted, now post-COVID, we're not. Yeah, we're not getting more than we did then. But if you take COVID out of the picture, we were getting just a hair, just barely more than what we were getting. So it's not significant by any means. And again, that wasn't the intent of the legislation. So
Effectively, we're pre-legislation dollars. And then the argument that I've always heard is, well, community crossings is a makeup. But they canceled half of it this year. Yeah. So. And long-term, I mean, they're going to have to address the gas tax just because of fuel efficiency and less driving, electric. I mean, they do have some triggers in there for alternative energy sources and more efficient vehicles, but I don't think I've heard from different legislatures that they're going to have to eventually address it nationally and locally.
And obviously, the community crossings program has been successful. I mean, we've had a number of really good projects that have been funded through community crossings, but, you know, ultimately what would be best for local government is to take that pot of money and just put it into VH, so that we would have, because, you know, community crossings, they tout it as a simplified grant fund, but it really is fairly complicated, and especially some of our rural counties really struggle to comply with that program. And we have a pretty hefty match with that too.
Yeah, 50% match on CCD right now.
One other thing is, when you talk about gas tax, make sure that
Yeah, come on up, Sally, if you're gonna talk about it, because the people online can't hear you.
Just a reminder that when you talk about gas tax, there are two different gas taxes. There's the state gas tax and there's the federal gas tax.
Right.
And the federal gas tax is the one that now does not completely fund the federal transportation bill, in which Congress has had to add money from its general fund to support the transportation bill. That's on the federal end, and I think mostly Stu's and Tom's concerns, of course, are on the state end, and which also has to support the match for the federal dollars that we get in transportation. So there's a whole lot of things that state and local money have to fund. Maintenance matches for federal aid projects like Windberg and Morehouse and Yeager for the county, not to mention any new construction or, you know, bridges or local projects. Right.
Yeah, complicated, but it all.
Yeah, I mentioned the federal because it's all being impacted
Right.
by the driving habits and and efficiencies.
Well, and quite frankly, most of the impact that we're gonna be able to have locally is gonna be on what the state
State
is
part
gonna
of
be
the gas
anyway, in
tax.
terms of how that division is made between what's going to state projects versus the local. So that's the main reason why I brought it up. Okay, anything else, Stu or Jody or
Thank you,
John?
Stu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob, where are we now? In terms of what funds do
health
we still need
insurance,
to?
or we haven't looked at health insurance.
Is
yet
there a
for the general fund.
reasonable proposal, Bob, based on the assumptions that you make going into the budget time and the premiums you assign, not knowing whether they're going to be single or family and all? Is there a reasonable position that would say we could reduce? Can you go back to that page?
To the
To the insurance one? Is
That we
what
could
you're looking
reduce
at?
the self-insurance line item by $154,902? And I'm not kidding.
I know you're not.
He's not joking.
He's not laughing.
This is, if I can, and this is, I don't know what page this is, 86 is where this information is. Now, some of it, that's just the coverage. Down here, I think it's the second little chart down, where it's got the coverage by date, January 1st of each year. And you can see, well, then the last column is just general fund, but you've compared these other guys over here. you can see that we've had a shift, and we continue to have a shift over the years of people changing insurance coverages. So 2021 compared to 2020, we had 8 people who did not take the health insurance before that are now taking it. And you can see that some of the shifts are, it's not just going from waived up to these other sections. You know, this may be going from waived down to employee and some from employee, but we are seeing that shift. And so I anticipated $156,000 of additional need based on this shift. So if you're wanting to get rid of, you know, that deficit of $150,000, if you made the assumption that there will be no shift, that would do it. I mean, I could lower that because I'm saying I want to increase that by 156,000. This is my anticipated shift with zero science behind this, but just looking at what we've done in the past. I believe that we even, like right now, I had Heather run the report, and I think we have one more person waived insurance than what we did when the year started. So, but now I'm going through all of next year. So this would be something, and I just wanted to have that reflected in the request that we will probably continue to have some shifts. Looking over here also, this one, and I didn't get the last payroll done, that was last Friday. But this is just the general fund, and this is how much the county is paying out each payroll. So just a little bit less than $300,000 from the general fund is, you know, and that's based on all the different usages and what the county's responsibility is. And so the average of all the ones so far this year, and by the way, this one is zero because we do health insurance twice a month, and that was a month when we had 3 payrolls. So when there is a third payroll, health insurance, people's checks go up a little bit. But anyway, we've got 9 payrolls left. And so I'm saying that the way we have it budgeted right now, I have $141,600 extra. I should finish the year, but now we did at the last council meeting, we were going to pay some of the cum cap people, pay their health insurance out of there. But so for this year, that number is going to go down. But, you know, we have more generally for 21 budgeted probably than what we have if there is no shift change and if there's no new employees, you know, that sort of thing. So, I mean, I think that there's a little bit we can do there. I don't know how you can quantify how much we should reduce that down. And you can see here, I mean, these numbers are going to jump around. As people come and leave county employment, these numbers aren't real, you know, they're very, very close, but they're not, you know, an absolute. So between those two things, this is just really be your call. If you wanted to cut that by $150,000, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it because I think, you know, it could be we might need an additional appropriation next year, but I wouldn't say that that would be that we will need an additional appropriation next year. So anyway, that's what I've got. I mean, I've got like, what I'm thinking is you've got close to $140,000. No, that's not the right one. $140,000 extra. Plus, I'm adding $150,000 a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And
so between the two.
And the 140,000 is not going to maybe go down that much. You know, I would certainly feel okay if you would say lower that by 100,000. And if you did 150,000, that's not a.
Before we change that, can we go back over to the income real quick?
The income that.
On the general fund.
Okay.
Line 0411.
Okay.
Can you give me an explanation of why we went to the 591 again?
And I believe the sheriff might be able to answer that. Better, he hasn't been up here for 5 minutes, has he? If we do a word count thing, I bet he might be the leader of this thing. But I think that's what we get from the state. That is the set required that we would get from the state.
But
Did, that's right.
But
It's
is
their
that
fault.
591, that's,
Is that pretty well, because it just seems like we're making a jump down quite a bit from the 660, whatever the number.
We had 20,000 at the end of
663.
June, and we've got $642,000 since then, but that's the 591,
Well,
you know, the big numbers included in that.
If I add what's expected yet to what?
Plus the 20,850. We got 20,850 by the end of June. We've got 642,000, so we've got
Still coming.
660 this year.
Right. And so we're going from 660 down to 591. Why the drop when we were at 1 million, a little over it? in
That's when the
19?
state changed their formula,
Okay.
and they're just saying you're going to get this amount now. Before it was up and down,
Okay.
and it did cost some counties a lot of money.
but we're trending back up again in population, right?
We are, and again, COVID changed all of that, and there hasn't been any more meetings to discuss that formula and how it relates to COVID, because they were just taking the number of level 6 felons you were holding, plugged it into a formula and said you get this much. And I think what they did is they took years past, like, if I remember, it was like 2016, 17, and 18, took the average and said this is what you were holding, so you get this much money. When I tell you, like Vandenberg County, he's out millions. I mean, he's out a lot of money for holding inmates. But there hasn't been any more discussions on that. But our population, yes, it is going up. Did you guys take out the retirement?
What, Tom? Commissioner Murtaugh is.
The people that were
waving
moved over to,
approach the
I
mic.
don't know, we'll have to ask Bob.
the people that were moved over to the public safety tax and and
retirement
medical insurance, everything, the retirement followed them. Did you go back and
Yes,
take it
I
out of the
did,
general?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
I walked out,
Paula's
and came
telling
back
me
in.
I have to speak
I walked
up.
out, came back in.
Oh.
What'd you say your population is now?
You just said it's going back up.
It's going back up. It's probably low.
I asked that the other day.
Yeah, upper 400, lower 500. I don't have it on my phone. If we go to Caliber, I can get it for you like that.
I asked Big, you're back there the other day, he said you hold 603.
603, 604.
Yeah, and you got 450 in there.
It was 489 like a week ago.
You got room.
We do have room, but the other thing we've been able to do, and part of that, keeping this out of our facility, what we've done, if you weren't aware, we've turned cells into, I call them days of the week. Days of the week cells. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's something we as an administration came up with early in conjunction with the Quality Correctional. Somebody's brought in on Monday, they're in that cell for 14 days. They're monitored, checked. They don't go back to general population until they've reached the 14 days. We were able to clear out a B-pod, a site of B-pod, so that was kind of our overflow. But as the population goes up, the time in those cells is going down. But yeah, we do have room, but right now would be the last time you'd want to house anyone for anybody, especially, I mean, it's going to end up in our facility. I mean, we've been lucky so far. Yeah. It's going to get there. We're just we have a plan for it, but if we start holding housing to draw that number up, then our payments going out for medical because of COVID are going to skyrocket.
I just didn't know if that was really what we thought it was going to be, or if it was more realistically going to be more in that 650-ish range, based upon where we'd been this year.
So if I recall the legislation from last year, there was an increase in the per diem for holding DOC. Not much, like $5 or something?
Like $2.50.
Okay. But it was, instead of reporting monthly, what you report, they still pull that information in, but you're paid based on the previous 12 months.
Yes.
So unless our DOC inmates have dropped, we should see at least what we're seeing today.
Correct.
So have our DOC dropped in the last 12 months?
I would say yes, because our population's dropped, and those folks would have gone to, in a lot of cases, they went to community corrections.
And we do not get paid on community corrections. Okay. So that, it probably is a good number then to keep it 591 instead of increasing it. Okay.
Okay. Thought I'd at least ask, because I,
Yeah, I forgot about the per diem thing.
okay.
Well, before you get off of that, he's not going anywhere, is he?
No, it's not.
What's that?
He's
You're not
learned.
going anywhere.
I'm still sitting here.
Okay.
I don't remember what that number is. What's that number, Kate? Oh, I've long
Yeah,
passed it.
0411 is the number.
No, that's not what I want. I want transactions. There's some of these, we get these things regular, I don't know what it is. But here's you got that big amount there, but we have some of these other ones that are whatever marked parole.
Oh, boy, you're gonna ask me something I have never seen. I have not seen
And
that
so, I mean,
before.
besides that, we're getting some of these other, and this, we're just looking at the month of August, that was a bigger month, but.
You know what, I'd have to ask on the parole.
We
thing. I
get, because it
have
seems
not
like,
seen
I
that
mean, this has
before.
been consistent, that we get this stuff all the time, that stopping at 591 seems like we're underestimating our actual when we're, increasing the revenue. If we don't get the revenue that we're anticipating, it's not gonna take it out of commissary or anything of the difference, but it just seems like, we are getting more money than just that 591 on a normal basis. That it does seem like that is something, I mean, we got 642, the second hour 6, so far we got 665.
Yeah.
That-
I mean,
At
I thought
$75,000
if we
more
split
than-
the difference between here and Rollins' idea of taking out of health insurance, we could wipe out the balance of what we've got to do.
There's another opportunity too, I think that, what do we assume this year is 96% spent on the budget? And that's what you put into the
That's
balance
what's
here,
been
right?
plugged in, yes.
At least for our departments, I didn't look at the data, but it sure seemed like our first half spending overall was less than this time last year, our first half spending. So even though we assume 96% for 2020 actual, my guess it's gonna be lower.
It's more like maybe
So
even
that
closer to
we don't have to.
But if we're talking for 21,
I
is
know
what-
that would
yeah,
appear
I know
in
what you're
the
saying there.
2020 end of year balance. But it would
yes, our
seem
cash
that
balance will be higher.
Our cash
Okay.
balance will be
balance
higher
going into
because of
21
unspent.
would be higher, and
So no matter what we called it, it seems like coming off the 96% for 21 would be.
And I just don't know, I just really would be very, very surprised if my number for income tax for 21 is not low by at least $154,000. I'd be very surprised. But,
so at this point, we're really kind of scratching around after those last few pennies or dimes that are left in the.
but it's almost just something we want to make ourselves
Right.
feel good, like we're balancing that
Yes,
budget
But I guess
more
that,
than.
I wanted that to know if that number on that 411 was as accurate as it needed to be, if it could be more like 6.25, 650, based upon where we've been this year. And if that were the case, then we're talking about just we're down to less than 100,000. Do we just do like Roland was saying and not use Bob's 150-some thousand shift, back that out of the health insurance line, and we call it balanced?
Yeah, because you have, I mean, we've gotten 665 or 662 already this year in there, so.
Right.
To think
Where
that
we
that's
are
going to be less
today,
next year.
That's what I was and to think that we're not going to be at least
Yeah.
darn close to that. That's why I was saying 650 felt safe to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
But I didn't know.
We
what
got
the rest of
660 now, we still got months left, and there's never a month, I don't think, where we don't post something to that line.
Right, and I guess that's why I was wondering if that wouldn't be appropriate, what the rest of the council thought. I'm not supposed to be really driving the ship as the chair, but it's one of those things that's
You
bugging
could put it
me.
in there and I could go back and ask.
Well, it's,
I mean,
We gotta change names.
on something where it's not necessarily even in your control other than making sure
Yeah,
we send
it's-
the bills in.
Right.
When we
Yeah.
build a revenue number, we're just guessing ourselves,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's not like,
No, I mean, you probably could put it at about 600 to 625. 650, I mean, I don't know, because you know that.
625 would be good.
Now he's saying, or Kaylee is saying that she's got an email there with the parole, it says they're housed on parole issues. That mean anything to you?
That's not something I've ever heard. Okay.
Okay, what did you just say?
I think, was the number 625 that I think people were comfortable with?
It's getting closer.
So at 120,902, I think we could shave that out of the expected increase that you were thinking on the health insurance, or what?
Now, one thing that I had marked, I don't think that we have ever, I don't want
I don't know how you keep all that straight.
to beating on a dead horse here, but
I get motion sickness watching that scroll.
the, no, not Mitts.
Oh, yeah, take it all out of mitts,
Yeah.
right,
Oh,
Kent?
He was happy.
Don't touch me.
Maybe, this
Right.
number still bothers me.
Right.
we're meeting with Julie next week
Okay,
to talk about that.
okay.
We're gonna go back.
And we can still make
So
some,
then that would take us down to 100,000, if that were
And it may
indeed
be
to go
partial,
to
they've
zero.
got new voting machines coming in, as Lisa noted well, and it may not be zero,
I don't think it'll be zero.
very well may.
and that's fine, yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but, yeah, it's, and we can make changes when, is that a week from Thursday? Or is that next Thursday? Next Thursday is that
Next
night one?
Thursday is,
Is it
yes.
next
What I would like is to have it set,
It's like,
so that we can't really make changes because we need to print out the ordinance that you sign, and that has to come out of Gateway. And so if you make changes like the day of the approval, you're gonna have to stay around afterwards because we have to go put it in Gateway and print out new forms.
We should get to consensus on Monday on that.
Okay, if we have it by the evening meeting, that is just great.
And the other thing, when you speak with our clerk, there was a question about our court fines, the revenue. Did
Yeah,
we
the
resolve?
950. She's looking into that.
She's looking into
Yeah.
that as well,
Yeah.
so that could be an increase of our revenue.
Or decrease, maybe.
I was hoping increase, because that's.
no decreases.
I'm not talking
Not on that
decreases,
side.
yeah. But I have a question mark, $700,000,
Yeah.
so.
She commissioned her
Okay.
team as a result of
Good.
yesterday, last night to get on that, so.
Thanks, I just had that written on my notes here.
The other thing too, is that gaming, if that goes up, right?
Well, yeah, we decreased the gaming.
Do you want to go through, quickly, go through the revenues, or just
We did have,
eyeball it again and?
I don't know if Dave brought anything new about fairgrounds.
I was gonna
Right.
say the fairgrounds
Oh, yeah.
potential costs.
Yeah, that's what, I guess, do we want to pause? Happy tummies. Happy tummies.
That better be good news.
How happy? That better be good news, Dave.
I think we're looking to the sheriff for $500,000 additional.
He already said he had mics that are more efficient, but yet
Yeah.
he used up his utility bill. So that seems.
Now we're beefing up the utility bill would be adding testing. They'd have to charge 116, but man, they'd be,
No, you could go to Meyer.
you go to Meyer.
Is it free?
All right.
know what I think, I don't know.
What all, before people leave, John, what all funds do we still need to at least kind of give a blessing to before we, beyond what we're gonna discuss with respect to the fairgrounds? Do you have kind of a running list of
I
what we
think,
have?
it would be nice, I mean, I would like it if we could just go down. I don't have that terrible many other funds to go through them all, just so that you have seen them all, because
Right.
I'm not sure all of them were discussed.
So, yeah, just to make sure we've at least seen them and said we're okay and given our stamp of approval.
Yeah.
So let's plan on being back here at
101? I got 1201. for
110.
I brought my lunch.
110.
110.
All right.
We'll come back at 110. We'll finish this
110.
discussion about the fairgrounds and the general fund and
Little Weehawken services.
then all these,
Little
those
Weehawken
little guys like
visitors.
that.
Thomas B. Murtaugh's got to come up and try and Kaylee
Solid
for
waste,
the solid waste district.
yeah.
Does Kaylee do the solid waste?
Budget hearing went well yesterday.
Okay, so are we